fifth generation warfare, basically.
Yes, yeah. Can you explain that?
Okay, so we've previously basically lived in a world of kinetic warfare. You've got bombs, bullets, guns. You get shot, you get killed physically, you're attacked physically.
Yeah.
And then fifth generation warfare is much more about psyops.
Yeah.
It's just much more about making you question reality itself, so that you're not sure where you are, what you are. It includes techniques used by also advertising companies and stuff. It's called things like flooding the zone.
Like, I know a lot of people say that Londoners can be quite rude, but I feel like if you do just chat to people,
It can break them easy.
Yeah.
I mean, really easy. You just the first part of it they're not sure about, and then the second part, Londoners have like this different quality in their conversations. They don't have the same sort of vibe when it comes to
compared to like who?
Compared to people from Cardiff, I would say I would chat with them and you're having a conversation, and people are very much like, embracing a topic, feel comfortable, can just have a conversation. It's free flowing. In London, people lose their sense of how to communicate more when they're communicating with people in public. I was talking to a guy yesterday. We were talking about the trains. He was so detached. He couldn't get his bearings together because it was a lot of like communicating, and he's not used to being in public transport communicating.
Right.
And I feel that with London quite a lot. I like it though.
Yeah.
It's kind of sweet. It's kind of like London's a load of people who are internal. They are living like in that way all of the time, and sometimes they come out of it and they have this wonderful experience.
When I was living in Glasgow, I'd come down here often because I was seeing someone at the time, and I found weirdly the easiest people to talk to in London were the homeless people.
Yeah.
You could chat to homeless people
I
anywhere
was
because
chatting to
they
one
would desperately.
Jason.
They're the people most desperate to chat anyway.
Yeah,
they just want to have a conversation because they get walked over and walked past all the time, and so I just chat with them.
This guy wants to be the blue man. The guy I was chatting with yesterday, I gave him a $5 and we were having a little conversation. He was saying he's saving up to get blue Dr. Martens, and he's going to get blue trousers and a blue top, and he's going to get a blue mask, and he's going to be blue man, and everybody will know him, and that's how he'll get out of being homeless.
There was a guy in San Francisco when I was a kid. We went to San Francisco, and he was the Bushman. I think he's quite popular there. You got the bin man in Edinburgh who drums on the bins.
We used to have the Karate Kid in Cardiff.
The what?
Karate Kid.
Oh,
he
right.
used to jump out. He was dressed in the 80s. He had a little red bandana around his head.
Right.
And he'd jump out and he'd go, ah! And he was known as the Karate Kid. You'd be walking down Albany Road and then suddenly he just, boom, straight out.
Yeah.
Eventually he jumped out in front of a car and did it to a car, and the car ran him over and he died.
Oh,
Yeah.
right. Yeah. It's not very karate.
No, well, it is. It's like kamikaze, isn't it? It's actually Harry Carey is the most karate you can get. To be perfectly honest,
I feel like we should get on topic.
Go on. So we're recording.
We're recording.
Good,
We're here.
good,
Yeah,
good.
I feel like
Good.
we'll open with that because that was an interesting bit of chat. I want to chat about you. You were talking to me yesterday in the radio, but kind of off mic. About what it's like to be sort of chased around by all these people and sort of it's almost like you've got a death wish doing what you're doing.
Death wish is right. I think death wish is it came to a point. I mean, I don't want to say it when the audience is a bit younger, like on the radio, but man, I was sad at one point. I was in a band. I loved making music. The music industry had been completely destroyed. The night scene had been completely decimated.
Where?
In Cardiff. There was nothing. I mean, it was a home of music. At one point in Cardiff, it was the only place where you didn't have to have a busking license in the whole of UK.
Really?
Because it was the land of song. It was the capital of the land of song.
So what happened to the Cardiff music scene?
It got decimated by housing, bougie housing being built all throughout Cardiff city centre. So we had some of the most amazing clubs around. Back in the late 90s and early noughties, there was there's an Irish bar that still exists. It's underneath the Holiday Inn. It's next to the Millennium Stadium.
Right.
It's a brilliant place. It used to be so vibrant, full of live music every night. Some of the best would go there, and it was kind of like there was loads of different places in Cardiff where people would go through this sort of it's kind of like a rites of passage. Same with TJ's in Newport, just down the road and stuff. There was certain places where people went and played, and these places either don't exist or are barely allowed to exist. I think is because a lot of these swanky housing got built in Cardiff city centre, and suddenly all of the laws change.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's hard. That's a hard bit. I can't remember what we were talking. Oh yeah, chasing out music being chased around though.
Yeah. Being chased around. I want to hear.
So Death Wish. That's
Death Wish. Yeah. Okay, so let's for people who don't know your website or your work. Explain a little bit about how you got into that, and then when was the first time you got chased?
Right. So it was about 2015-16. I took a 3-month hiatus out on psychedelics.
Okay.
I said I'm gonna end myself, or I'm gonna just explore myself for 3 months, see what I find.
What, acid or
acid, mushrooms, MDMA, a range of things. And I smoke a lot of weed. I was growing weed at the time as well, a large amount of weed. So it meant that I was high all of the time.
Right.
But I knew there was drugs I needed to come off. I had got up to the point where people in the band I was in was feeding me really negative stuff. So and it was on purpose. It was like codeine, morphine, and stuff. So I was a drug addict, man, and I was sad. And drug addicts are sad. I wasn't a bad drug addict. I didn't go out and steal from people or hurt people. I hooked and play music all day, man. I mean, that's all I wanted to do.
So when you say hiatus, psychedelic hiatus, you were taking time off from drugs? Are you doing just psychedelics, or
I
what
cut
was
off all of the bad people in my life. I said I got to get off certain things, and I've got to explore my mind, because I had a bad experience when I was young. I was groomed for 2 years by a prolific sex offender. That between the ages of 9 and 11. When I finally told my parents and went to the police, the police told us that he had molested a 3-year-old during that time, and that kind of stuck with me. I always felt like there was this 3-year-old that I couldn't protect in life, and so I had the drugs were part of that.
Sense.
The drugs were part of me being extremely sad. And that whole process of trying to find myself, it worked very much so, because I did the one thing that is the hardest thing to do when you're sober, let alone when you're extremely full of emotion, is write to myself and try. I didn't even get through a paragraph, to be perfectly honest, before I was in complete tears, and I knew I was a journalist. Suddenly I had already known it.
Why?
I used to see something said about something, and I used to go and look about it, and then I used to go and look somewhere else, and then I'd find something else, and then I'd go on the archives and find that someone's changed something from the past, and I'd be like, that's freaky, that's freaky. And then I'd get on about my business and do whatever. So I'd already when I was She won't enjoy me saying this, but when I was about 17, my parents had a divorce, and my dad was having an affair, and a woman had to be named in court, and we did not know who that person was, so I went and investigated my own father. I found everything out about the woman that he was having an affair with. I found her number from a coded message within the phone
bounty
book.
Hunter type situation.
I went through all of the poll tax records. I found her address, got her named on the divorce papers. It was. I realized very early on I was very good at doing that, and that kind of stayed with me through life. And I had a few experiences where I was like, "Oh, I'm finding that interesting." And then when I had this hiatus, I said, "Okay, well, I'm going to do some other stuff. I'm going to start becoming becoming a journalist.
Were you always interested in like news and stuff? Or?
Yeah. I was a news hound. I'm a news hound. I used to watch all of the news, every single news channel, every single question time, every single possible debate show.
I feel like it's a thing that people are doing now. Like kids are getting interested in news because there's so much stuff going on, but it's not really something that people like have paid attention to for a long time.
I'd say I watched all of it only to find out that it's not worth watching any of it because they don't tell you they don't tell you anything at all.
Seems like you found that out about 20 years before everyone else did.
They keep you in a circle. It's very nice. If you listen to Andrew Marr go blah 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 blah, then honestly you will not learn anything. In actual fact, later on, if you learn a lot about this situation, you'll realize Andrew Marr is part of a coordinated effort to change your mind and distract you from other things. I've done some programs, a little bit programs about him, but anyway, I started writing articles, and straight away I went to something I felt comfortable with, which is history. I was brought up in the 17th century. I told you this just before, and people always laugh at it when I say I was brought up in the 17th century. They go, ha, ha, ha. It's like, no, I was brought up in the Sealed Knot 17th Century Enactment Society. Every weekend we were in a different place in the country with 8,000 odd people, sometimes less, sometimes more, dressed in 17th century clothing from Thursday to Monday. My dad was a commanding officer of a regiment. We had a regiment of 250 cannons, muskets. My sister was a musketeer, one of my other sisters who carried the halberd. My mum was a sergeant running across the battle. So I had this a little bit of an alternative lifestyle, and I loved history, and so I went to history with journalism, and I went and one of the first people I looked into, so here we go, this is an example of this.
Yeah, go on.
Laura Koonsberg.
Okay.
So Laura Koonsberg had just become political editor. It's about 2015-16. Just become political editor of the BBC News, and it was just as Corbyn come in. I remember that, and she was so clearly biased. Clearly, she showed her.
In what way?
She was anti-Corbyn.
Okay.
If you're anti-Corbyn, you're not objective, and if you're the political editor for BBC News, you can't be anti one side. That doesn't make any sense, and that's an affront to taxpayers, affront to the British people, everything. So I got really annoyed. So I looked into Laura Koonsberg, and I discovered her father had run sweatshops in Peru. And got a special dispensation in Peruvian law when they changed the law to protect workers. His factory got exemption so he could still use slave labor. Right. That's Laura Koonsberg's dad. Laura Koonsberg's grandfather was Eckhard von Koonsberg. And Eckhard von Koonsberg, he went to school with Prince Philip and all of those in one of the German Schlosses, the really, really posh schools where all the royalty go. And he helped create the NHS at the start. But that NHS was a fragile NHS. It was full of secrets and lies. Right. This led to one of my second major articles. So that article got a lot of traction, and I realized, okay, history, family history of people. And so it came up to a time, I wrote a few other articles, and I had some weird adventures. But then in 2017, it was the election. It was Theresa May. It was Jeremy Corbyn. And I was like, this was really interesting. It was before the election, about a week and a half. I was a writer. I was a journalist. But I hadn't said that to myself. I called myself a blogger. I kept calling myself a blogger.
So you hadn't made NEWSPASTE yet? This was all...
No. This was I was publishing on a thing called vocal.media, which was a free thing you could put up, and they'll give you some sort of revenue from advertising. Right. But basically, you edit your own work, you draft your own work, you put up your own work.
A really early version of like Substack.
Yes, it's still... I think it's still in existence. It had like other outlets like swamp.media, and they wanted me to write stuff about weed because they didn't like my political stuff. It was a little bit too spicy for them, I think. But
what were you writing about weed?
I would just facts about weed, a history of weed.
Was it like in politics at the time?
No, not really. I wanted to write about all of this stuff, but I also wanted to write about something I love completely. And there's some interesting history in there. Exeter's cheese, for instance, all the cheese varieties come from one skunk number one that was a a squat down in, I think it was in Luton, called the Exodus Collective. And that is a brilliant story, the Exodus Collective, and how they found this one cheese plant, which was the stinkiest plant around. But I love history. And during this election with Theresa May and Jeremy Corbyn, I was desperate to find a different angle than everybody else. And so I went back in the history of Theresa May's family. And her father, Hubert Brazier, had worked with a guy in, the reason why there was something suspicious, I was looking for all of the information. The reason why there was something suspicious was I looked for Hubert Brazier's Wikipedia page, and there was no Wikipedia page.
Right.
And then I went to the archives, and I put in what his Wikipedia page would, the title would be if he did have a Wikipedia page. Wikipedia.com/Hubert_Brazier.
What do you mean by, like, because I know nowadays people talk about like the Wayback Machine.
Yeah, that's it.
It's the Wayback Machine.
So
sure.
go archive.org is the Wayback Machine. So you can go back and you can look at websites that were saved from the past. Someone's cleverly, sometimes they're auto saved. And so I looked on it to see if there was a Wikipedia page for it. I become very interested in Wikipedia history, looking through Wikipedia history.
Yeah.
I found what they were pulling out of Wikipedia history gave me stories, gave me articles, what they're censoring,
Right.
and I can see where they're censoring. That was like a really good way to find stuff. And so when I found out it was a Hubert Brazier page once upon a time, I was like, oh, hello, what's in there? And there was only one thing on there. It had been merged with Theresa May's page.
Of course.
And so it had become a section, and they had taken out one photograph or one thing, and it was a copy of all of the places he had served as a vicar. And one of them was in a hospital down south, Eastbourne, and he worked during the time that Dr. John Bodkin Adams worked in the hospital. So he's a chaplain at the hospital, and Dr. John Bodkin Adams murdered. He was a doctor working for the early NHS that had just been created by people like Eckhard von Kuhnsberg, and he was a doctor who gave lethal injections to over 130 patients after they signed everything over to him in thetheir will.
Right.
He'd convince them to do that, say, "Oh, look after, just in case anything happens," and then he'd give them a lethal injection. This happened over 130 times. It's one of there's a fair few. There's a film or two about it.
There's a really famous doctor in history and British history that
Howard
did the same.
Shipman.
Shipman, yeah. So it's Shipman that's just not as popular.
But he was the early Shipman.
Yeah.
And he got arrested for it. It went through a trial, and they ended up they covered it all up because the NHS was so fragile they didn't want to hurt it. So everybody involved.
This is like early days NHS. This is like 50s, 60s?
Yeah, 50s.
Yeah, 50s.
So this is 1955, 56,
Wow,
I
right,
think.
okay.
Maybe 57, 58. And the whole thing got covered up. And Theresa May's father got a promotion. He got made from chaplain of Eastbourne Hospital, and then he was the vicar of Enstone and Haythrop. And Enstone and Haythrop was Oxfordshire, where all of the richest people lived, all of the most wealthy and powerful people lived. And it was like, to save the NHS, we'd hide this. Well, I put that article up, and 250,000 people read it in the first day. And I absolutely crapped myself because that actually gave me money.
That was the first time you blew up.
Yeah, but it actually gave me some money, man.
Yeah.
The way vocal media worked meant that I was someone who I had a really hard. I've always been a poor guy. You know, I don't chase money.
Sure.
So because of that, I don't really make masses of money, and that gave me like this boost of like $1.50 or something all of a sudden, and I was like, I remember when I was researching the article, and I was before I actually did it, I'd been up all night. I had notes all around me. I was in my boxer shorts. It was about 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning, and my mate come home from after a night out, and I looked at him. I was like, "Monkey, I'm a journalist." And I was just like, I realized at that moment that this sort of thing isn't something that normal people do.
Yeah.
This is something that it takes you over. And if you can find the thing in life that takes you over, then you found your calling.
Yeah.
And that's and then people started to chase me. So the first person that came into my life was a Mexican in Cardiff, which is I would say a really rare thing.
Yeah, I think it's more common now, but at the time,
I never met a Mexican in Cardiff, and suddenly there was this Mexican, and he was feeding me drugs. Oh man, he come along. He sometimes he'd give me a chocolate or two, and they had drugs in them, and he'd only tell me after I've eaten them.
Right.
He was and then while I was on drugs, he would try and convince me of all sorts of things. The Earth is flat, everything else,
just
and
make it crazy.
It was focused, and I started to think, okay, no, maybe I'm just paranoid. But then there was a certain other things that this guy did that was very, very suspicious. And he told me long stories about his family, and it sounded like his family worked in intelligence for the Americans, running stuff. And soon I got this guy out of my life.
Right,
I was okay, that's a bit weird. I'm not going to take the risk. And I thought I was being paranoid.
Yeah.
And I've had a few things like this throughout.
Why do you think if his family was in American intelligence, they were getting involved with you when you were talking about British family history?
I was because I was branching out already.
Okay.
It
wasn't to do with the Theresa May stuff.
I was in love with James Corbett and his work, Corbett Report. I was in love with James Evan Pilato of Weekly World News. I was listening. I was intently listening to Jason Bermas and others. I was starting to go on podcasts, and the podcasts weren't just in Britain; it was abroad as well. And one of the podcasts, the Ed Operman podcast, was possibly opening me up to being seen by something which I now know was being created then. That is a world of fifth generation warfare, basically.
Yes, yeah. Can you explain that?
Okay, so we've previously basically lived in a world of kinetic warfare. You've got bombs, bullets, guns. You get shot, you get killed physically, you're attacked physically. And then fifth generation warfare is much more about psyops. It's just much more about making you question reality itself, so that you're not sure where you are, what you are. It includes techniques used by also advertising companies and stuff. It's called things like flooding the zone.
And this is what you like. Is this related to, say, like regime change in other countries as well, like CIA
everything.
sort of psyops
everything. So for instance, during the pandemic, Event 201 just before, which planned out
Bill
all
Gates
of that. They had Matthew Harrington, who was the head of Edelman PR. Edelman PR managed probably 60% of all PR and marketing for nearly every single company, every single government, every single entity on it. They are the ones who are one. Edelman Trust Barometer is part of Davos and part of the World Economic Forum.
For people who don't know Event 201, it was early November, I think, 2019. October, November, and they planned out a scenario that was essentially COVID before COVID, and they planned it out, and loads of people played different roles, and they went, basically, it was how do you control people in the case of a pandemic from China. It lined up perfectly, and it was just before COVID basically released across the world.
We know that the COVID was whether it was by accident or on purpose, I do not know. It was released from Wuhan in October. So this took place just after they knew it had been released. So there isn't just a correlation. It gets released. This happens, and they talk about how they try and stop people finding out the information about this happening, and the way to do it is flooding the zone. Matthew Harrington says. He says during Event 01, the best way is to flood the zone, and that's a form of fifth generation warfare. Now, what we're seeing in the Epstein case is flooding the zone. Loads of information comes out all at once. Every side is speaking. Before that, for that to work, you need to be in control of all of the voices, or at least be able to influence the influencers. And the only way you can influence influencers is really with money and then boosting their platforms.
Yeah.
So those who get boosted up, who have millions here, millions there, a lot of them have been put into that position so that people automatically think they're interesting, they'll follow them, and then they just tell them the same information. If you go down, say on X, if you're scrolling down your feed on the For You part, you when something like the Epstein files comes out or something comes out, they'll concentrate on one thing, and every influencer will tweet the same thing.
Yes.
Now, I've seen that from the other side. I've had them come and offer me money to do exactly that, because I'm
to stop stories, or to what exactly?
To post what they want to post,
right? And
to go against everything that I believe.
Yeah.
On purpose, so that I don't have autonomy. So the Mario Narwhal people who run X, they had me central to a few X spaces, and then afterwards, I think that was a bit of a grooming process. I had 4 days where it was the biggest X space, and I basically I was the central guy who was talking about it all. When I originally went on there, Adrian Dittman was on there, who was really Elon Musk, and it's like it's clear these were the big boys. And then afterwards, they started offering me contracts. They started saying, we'll give you money to comment about our AI. Just comment on her. And I said, all right, then. They gave me money. I commented. They said, no, don't say that. You have to say these nice positive things. I said, oh, you didn't say that. you said, I comment on your AI. So I'm saying this AI looks like the most dystopian, horrible thing that you could possibly...
Is this around, this is like Twitter files time, sort of like X 2020?
2022.
2022. So it's like sort of boosting as well as like censoring. And this is the whole thing with the Twitter files.
2023, yeah.
And this is really, I was actually talking with my partner yesterday. You were talking about like the flooding of information, and it's happening with the Epstein files now. And not many people know about the Twitter files, is the thing where like there was the government linked directly with social media, and they were censoring, and they were shadow banning, and they were boosting other profiles. So there was like direct government involvement with what you could say and what you couldn't say. People getting demonetized on YouTube.
So it's called the Alliance for Secure and Democracy. Now, coincidentally, I was tasked in 2020 by Whitney Webb to find out who Klaus Schwab's father was, the head of the World Economic Forum, and I discovered that he had worked on the Nazi atomic bomb program for Escher Weiss. And then I discovered that Klaus Schwab had gone through this program in Harvard, which was called Kissinger's International Seminar, that was the precursor to the World Economic Forum's Young Global Leader program. So I'd already ended up investigating the people who did the Twitter stuff, because Kissinger's best friend was a guy called Guido Goldman, whose father was one of the founding fathers of Zionism and Israel, Nahum Goldman.
Right.
And Guido Goldman and Kissinger used to live in a bachelor pad together in the 70s. And it was like, it's tongue-in-cheek. They were like best buds, total best buds.
This seems to happen again and again. It's the Epstein thing with the Pottinger, and like everyone just lives together.
Yeah, indeed. Guido Goldman, after Kissinger's International Seminar got rumbled in 1967 as being funded by the CIA, so the Klaus Schwab, the training was CIA funded. It was funded.
This is pre-Young Global Leaders, or this is Young Global Leaders?
Okay. This is the precursor to Young Global Leaders. Gets rumbled as being a CIA-funded program, funded by the Fairfield Foundation, Asian Foundation, and the American Friends of the Middle East. American Friends of the Middle East, run by Kermit Roosevelt, who planned the first ever coups for the CIA.
Right.
So he's pretty big wig, sort of like manipulator.
Are they the same people that are now involved with things like Young Global Leaders? Is it just the same people again?
So Guido Goldman, basically, when Henry Kissinger's International Seminar falls through, Kissinger goes into the Nixon administration, and Guido Goldman starts setting up the German Marshall Fund of the United States at Harvard.
Okay.
It's the same thing.
Right.
But it's balls out. They said, okay, we know that. You know it's us doing it now. So Rockefeller and all of the others, David Rockefeller and all the others, turn up and say, we're funding the German Marshall Fund of the United States. And based at the German Marshall Fund of the United States, which various people have said that through their experience they know is a CIA operation to train future leaders, etc. Through that, based there in this period is the Alliance for Securing Democracy, which was run by a guy who I got a job once upon a time. That's a really complicated one. Michael Chertoff, who's a neocon, one of the most evil men in history. He looks like the devil. He's got
Klaus Schwab. He looks like an evil Nazi.
It's quite amazing. And of course, all of these guys are in the same circles. But Alliance for Securing Democracy was set up, and they ran Hamilton 68, which was the algorithm on Twitter that decided who was good, who was bad, and what they were doing was understanding the actual how the lay of the land was for implementing fifth generation warfare. If they're going to control the narrative, then they're going to have to control who speaks and who doesn't, and etc. So when they had all of those Twitter files happen, and Elon Musk start coming out, Matt Taibbi and stuff, they're looking like the heroes. This is actually a repeated ruse of the past. These new people who are going to do the exact same thing. Elon Musk's platform, X, is even worse than Hamilton 68 is for censorship. My experience itself is they tagged me. They tell me they tagged me, and they reduce it because I write articles about Elon Musk and Jeffrey Epstein's relationship. So they do exactly the same thing, but from the different side. So the neocons are people don't really understand the neocons and why they end up running things like Hamilton 68 and getting these positions. Neocons are kind of left wing with a right wing tilt or lilt, and whatever you'd say. Basically, in 1967, a guy called Irving Kristol, who was the grandfather of neoconservatism, also came out from these groups in Harvard during that time, just after Kissinger's international seminar gets exposed. The whole CIA are having a rethink. The CIA actually have had Gloria Steinem is exposed as a CIA agent in 1967. Loads of other things come out in 1967. They have a reset. They change the way they do things completely, and they take on neoconservatism, which allows for things like the creation of non-governmental organizations in other countries to create color revolutions. And neoconservatism is really interesting because it allows them to work with both left-wing and right-wing governments. And they just swap in and out, in and out, in and out.
People always talk about there's like different branches of the CIA, right? There's, I forget what the abbreviations are, but there's the Republican and the Democrat side. And so, like, you know, with Venezuela, everybody kind of gets a piece of it, whether they're happy with it, more happy with it, less happy with it. Everybody benefits in some way or another.
So I'd say that
the beginning of that.
You're right to an extent. I would say that the Democrats are controlled by a Republican-leaning CIA.
Sure.
So the Democrats, that was one of the things Epstein was doing. Epstein walked into Bill Clinton's office in 1993 and was there over the next 2 years 17 times while he was just president, and that's partly because the both Bill Clinton had previously been working for the CIA running guns or sorting out the Contra side
Contra, that whole thing,
in Mena, Arkansas. So he'd already been working for the CIA for years, and George Bush was just CIA leader just 10 years before, like 13 years before, and had become vice president, and then Reagan almost got assassinated, and then it became president, and it was clear the CIA were in charge, and it was a George H.W. Bush style CIA. and the Republicans found it very important at that time. This Republican-controlled CIA, this expression of George H.W. Bush's Republican-controlled CIA, found it very important to control the Democratic Party, and implanted. Jeffrey Epstein had already given funding to George H.W. Bush, had run guns with the CIA during Bush's to get Bush into office. Iran-Contra, the Iran side of it, was give guns to Iran so that they would hold the hostages longer, and the October surprise would happen, which would flip the election from Jimmy Carter and over to... It was a coup to Bush and Reagan. It was a coup, a CIA coup, and it was organized in Madrid and Barcelona by Stanley Pottinger, who's George H.W. Bush's best friend.
Yeah. Can you explain? You sort of skipped over it, but what was the almost Reagan assassination? I've not heard of this.
What was it? John Hinckley, I think his name is. I've been doing a lot of research into this.
I bet you
recently. Yeah. It's really bizarre because George H.W. Bush had was due to have a meeting with this guy's cousin the same week, or his nephew was due to have some. It was very strange. It was this guy who he came and he shot Reagan. He
actually shot him.
Actually shot him. It was 1980. It was about. I think it was 1981. It was about probably April or May, because it was about 4 months into Reagan's presidency.
Right.
George H.W. Bush, of course, had gone against Reagan and then become his vice president eventually. But it was clear that George H.W. Bush wanted to be in charge, and the CIA wanted to be in charge. And then this CIA that was really George Bush's CIA is very likely to have had a hand in that. There's lots of suspicious stuff. I'm going to do an article about it fairly soon, because what I'm doing now is I'm mapping out this circle of friends George H.W. Bush had in the 80s that included Epstein, Pottinger, and all of these guys. So but that's basically it in the beginning of his term.
Can I ask? It's sort of been talked about. It's blowing up on the internet a little bit more at the moment, but people are talking about the JFK assassination all over again, because obviously there's been a couple of assassination attempts on Trump's life, so it just comes back into the, I guess, world conversation. But there's this idea that when Nixon became president, the whole Watergate scandal was a setup because potentially he knew about the JFK assassination. I'm curious if you know anything about this, and that Watergate wasn't what we're told it is.
Watergate was 1,000 different things.
Yeah.
Again, the man who signed off Watergate, and he stayed on he got special permission to stay on as a Republican under Jimmy Carter to sign off Watergate, interviewing the head of the CIA himself, Al Helms, and saying, there's nothing else to see here, was Stanley Pottinger, George H.W. Bush's friend as well. He was the guy who signed off Watergate. But Watergate was multiple things.
Sure.
It was, it really, yes, it was a bit tongue-in-cheek that the CIA were caught looking like bugging offices and etc. And it was a bit of a political rivalry, and it was also, you're not allowed to be doing that. You're not allowed to be caught doing operations domestically. The CIA is in the constitution of the CIA that they're not allowed to actually surveil domestically.
Wasn't there like a time that there was some change in the law or something that meant that they stopped? When was it that they started to do that?
There's been a couple of times. Again, Orlando Letelier assassination in 1976 in Washington Row, in Embassy Row in Washington D.C. Orlando Letelier got blown up, and Eugene Proper started doing the investigation for the Justice Department, and in comes Stanley Pottinger and said, "Hey, there's an opportunity here. Why don't you come and meet my good friend, head of the CIA, George H.W. Bush, and we'll talk about this." And they went away and they said, "I tell you what, why don't you do this? Why don't you give us temporary right to spy in America so that we can sort
just
out
for a
this,
couple of weeks?"
Yeah, just a little bit. But really what people do is they concentrate on this, the CIA or etc. and what they're doing. But the CIA were not and are not the most powerful people in the American military and intelligence community. The Defense Intelligence Agency is probably the most powerful because it controls what's called the Tier 1 intelligence. So CIA ain't Tier 1.
Okay.
CIA Tier 2, Tier 3, somewhere down there. You're not allowed to know anything.
This is like the levels above classified.
Yes, and that whole thing. There's no Senate review, no possibility of congressional hearing, no oversight apart from a very select group of people. And these are the people who, when you actually investigate them, you discover they're all related to exactly the same people. So General Michael Flynn was the head of that agency, and he helped. He was brought in by Trump straight away. His protege is Stanley Pottinger's son. Is Matthew Pottinger. There's
the legacy.
He's the guy who's designed a military-grade fifth-generation warfare to be used on the people of the United States and the world, and he's written a book about how he's done it as well. So that's really like special. He's also had a lot of this very interesting. I will put a note for intrepid investigators. It's for a very small amount of people, but he was heavily involved in Russia Today, and some of the people who got put onto Russia Today while he's designing this thing where they're controlling all of the press and independent media, these new independent media people.
This is post-Cold War America going into...
You're talking, this is like 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14, going in Russia Today. You're talking about the Russia Today channel. Some of the people who went to work for Russia Today have been implanted there by the guy who's designing fifth-generation warfare tactics where they co-opt members of the media to be used as the controlled antithesis of the status quo, of the thesis. Everything is basically binary dialectics. They work in binary dialectics. These people, this is the issue. These people think it's good. These people think it's bad. Fight. And then it's easy to control everybody who's fighting about something, because then what you do is you go over here and you kidnap Maduro, or you go over here and you cause a war with Iran, or you go over here and you create a war in Ukraine, and everybody's watching all of this other stuff all over the place.
And this sort of, I imagine, ties back into the flooding of the zones. So everyone I know, I live in quite a liberal sphere. I'm an actor. I live with different artists and friends, and my family back home, they're quite conservative, so I get quite a different news perspective based on what's going on. But it's fascinating now. People are talking about Epstein in every circle, but you're talking about flooding of the zone because people are missing the point. People are talking about an island where he had sex with kids and other people had sex with kids, but they're missing the majority of the point. So why are they flooding the zone with Epstein now? And I know you said you're going to be talking about this more in the near future, but
this is really I think they saw the opportunity. Everybody who was they were manipulating the case very early on. That includes the Pottingers, Matthew Pottinger and John Stanley Pottinger. John Stanley Pottinger, of course, I've said all of these things. He's manipulated Watergate, assassination of Orlando Letelier, the assassination of Martin Luther King. He's the guy who signed that off. He was the guy who set up Iran-Contra. He was the very first guy who went to the CIA and convinced them that it was the thing to do, set up all of the meetings in Iran-Contra. He's also Jeffrey Epstein's victim's lawyer.
I think you described him quite well. I think you described him as like the CIA's mop-up man at one point. But he's the guy who comes in and just clears anything that might convict them.
That he represents the victims of Jeffrey Epstein suggests that they're already in control of both sides. And then if you investigate further, the legal teams are deep in I would say deep within the CIA's control, sphere of control or influence. I would maybe even further to say that they are CIA. So why would they be boosting out all this Epstein stuff now? They wanted to take out Maduro since the moment Maduro took office. They
tried once before.
They've tried. Some of it's a bit tongue in cheek, like that drone that blew up in front of him and stuff, and things like that. It
was the Bay of Piglets, right? A few years ago, where they tried to capture him and it failed desperately, and nobody's talking about that.
Some of it feels like some of it feels contrived, really contrived. The attempts installing leaders and stuff. It all looks so fake. that it started to make no sense. And I started to get, as early on, I started to get a sense that not everything's as it seems with this. And I think what they knew is that eventually we were all going to be so distracted with something really enormous, which is fifth generation warfare isn't just about the Epstein case.
Yeah.
It's about all of these things hitting us in the face all at the same time. As soon as you open every Pandora's box at the same time, everybody is going, and they don't know where to look. And then the CIA has finally been able to go in and get Maduro like that.
Yeah.
Without anybody, even the Venezuelans would have been watching the Epstein case or the this problem or that problem. They've created loads of problems on purpose, and that flooding of the zone, that is very important. It was also important. I mean, so go back to what the original question we were going on about being chased.
Yes.
So I when I first entered into the Epstein case, my very first article was about a woman called Nicole Youngkerman, who was getting involved in the UK NHS, and it was for me a really big and important story. I wouldn't be here today, that's for sure, if it wasn't for the NHS. I mean, I had Graves' disease. I almost died. Went down to 8.5 stone. I had radioactive treatment. I had my thyroid's out. I had throat surgery eventually. I had probably 8 years of treatment, and I felt very attached to the NHS, very protective of it. A lot of my early articles were related in some way to the NHS for quite a while. And when I found out that this lady had got involved in the NHS, well, she had ridden on Lolita Express with Jeffrey Epstein 3 times. She was invested in a company with Jeffrey Epstein. On the board of directors was her, the Ehud Barak, the 10th Prime Minister of Israel, a guy who was a Unit 8200 cybersecurity intelligence chief called Pinchas Bukras, Alex Dizengoff, Mia Elikai, other people. She was involved in every corruption scandal.
So what was her background before? Was she just
she was
higher up in the NHS?
She was supposed to be an elite Italian model, elite modeling.
Right.
So in 1995, she's posed as being elite models along with Naomi Campbell and other people who used to hang around with Epstein. I've only been able to find one photo shoot of her, so it looks like a cover.
Right.
And then she started taking over or managing big sport tech firms for sinister types, people who had lots of money, wanted to be involved in this, but wanted to make a load of money by doing naughty things and needed a front for it. And I think she became a bit of a front. And in actual fact, Infront Sports Media was one of her first companies, and they bought all of they had Philip Blatter as their head. That's Sepp Blatter's nephew. Sepp Blatter was the head of FIFA at the time, and FIFA awarded them all of the FIFA World Cup coverage rights up until 2022 with active nepotism. I knew a guy who wrote the about the Lennon assassination, Dave Whelan. He's come on my show a couple of times, and he told me he worked for Infront Sport Media at that time, and everybody knew there that it was a front company.
Right.
Absolutely everybody knew that it was a fake company that was set up just to make absolute, not millions, billions sporting rights. They bought it for pennies for what it was worth.
Right.
And then the Germans, even the German courts took Robert Louis Dreyfus, who was involved in this and was Nicole Youngkerman's lover for most of the time, even though he had a wife who ended up taking all of the inheritance from the family. He was the owner of Adidas and stuff, so he's obviously quite big. She then went on in the late noughties to run Shanghai Really Sports, which was an Asian group. I don't know what they were doing. All of this time, she's also, 2002, she's also meeting 2 senators with Epstein in a secret mansion meeting in the UK. So she's obviously doing some other things. I've got her on the arm of Brad Pitt in 2003, Paul Allen, one of the heads of Microsoft, in 2002. She's seriously looks like a compromise agent. She's fantastically gorgeous, super intelligent, intelligent, hanging around with spies all over the place, using false names on a fair few occasions too, and involved in some of the biggest business deals that's going to make her 500 million to $1 billion for what she owns now. Then in 2015, she really boomed. Just tech company after tech company after tech company. Every single thing that we buy, from OptioPay to Revolut. She's got her fingers in all the pies. She met Ferdinando Bracetti Peretti of the Bracetti Peretti family, in a very famous noble family. He's a Knight of Malta. He's head of the API oil company, biggest oil company in Italy. And she met him. They got married. His second wife, his first wife was Princess Matilda von Hesse, whose father was king. So obviously, you know, these are big lines. She married him, and then she set up NJF Capital in London, and she has made masses of money, invested in massive companies, including Swarm, which was a satellite array company that was sold to SpaceX, and in return she gets part of SpaceX.
Okay, so
she's invested in so many companies, and she was very much a front. And when it got to me reporting on her, I was the only one reporting on her. Nobody else had got that story, and nobody else was willing.
And she's tied to Epstein because he's helping her broker all these deals.
Helping her broker. But we could tell by the Epstein in the Epstein files that were released last week. There's emails where she's asking to have his babies, and he's saying, "Okay, how best do we go about this?" So she's not just a little bit. She's meeting secretly with senators in 2002. She's still in business with this Carbine 911 company that's an Israeli front that's trying to get official public contracts from things like also the NHS. She's getting involved in the NHS with the Health Tech Advisory Board under Matt Hancock. Daniel Korski, another interesting person who looks like an intelligence front and recently went to try and be mayor of London. He brought her into that.
Right.
So Daniel Korski, everybody should... Don't let him have any power. He's a dirty rotter. She's involved in all of these big things, and she's a brilliant front because she's got this pristine face. All of these guys, if they wanted to do this stuff, we go, oh, I don't want Jeffrey Epstein involved in the NHS. What are you talking about? Instead, you got Nicole Youngman. She's beautiful, and she had a pristine image. I come along with a load of articles that showed all of this stuff in 2019. She went on a campaign to just completely wipe me off the internet. She employed microtaskers to go through every single search result and have me taken off. First, at one point, it was just everything that mentioned me, full stop. She was just having me deleted from Google.
How did you find that out? How did you go from finding out that you were getting deleted?
Were contacting me and saying, I was given this task, and then I looked at it, and then I looked at what you were doing, and I'm really sorry. I've still got contact with all these people. I was getting I was getting messages from YouTube saying they were pulling down my videos.
Really?
They completely. Some were being geo-blocked, and then I received in 2020. I received a note from a Berlin court saying there was an interim injunction against me in Berlin. How am I supposed? Am I supposed to know how to challenge that? Anyway, and it was then that they used that interim injunction to go to big tech platforms to have my work pulled down and say, look, we're taking him to court for defamation, as though it's proof of defamation. Yet they never took me to court for defamation. The interim injunction is supposed to lead to a defamation. They told Substack recently that they have actually taken out 5 of these interim injunctions. Never taken me. You have to infer that when someone doesn't actually take you to court for defamation, yet they say they're lying, the reason why, when they're extremely wealthy, and they could do, is because they're guilty as sin, and I've backed everything up with sources. So they weren't even saying... it changed. Something changed recently because Substack... they said we've pulled 6 of your articles and videos due to a legal complaint, which is something I was literally dealing with this week after week. Every time I put it back up somewhere or publish it, I had to deal with more. So I was like, I'm going to fight this. So I put in a data request to them. I said, you've processed all my personal data. I want every single bit of detail that includes my name, anything about me, and all of the complaints in detail. And they sent me everything. And I got to see what they were saying, and what they were saying was crazy. Like, she never had any relationship with Epstein, that she hadn't been in business with him, that she hadn't been in car by 9/11, that I was just an evil conspiracy theorist, and all of this sort of stuff. It was just defamatory. And that gave me a massive case because I can prove what I say in a court of law. And what they're doing is she spent 7 years hurting my career, literally trying to destroy me, so that she could keep that pristine image on behalf of the worst people in society. And I don't think that's fair. So I went and I put in a letter before action where I said, I'm going to sue you, and these are my demands.
Right.
I put a letter before action in on Monday. On Friday, her friends from the Vatican contacted me. Her baby was baptized in the Vatican. She's Italian royalty. She's Countess Bracetti.
And this is when you were talking about you started to get followed by the Vatican intelligence. I had had a year of a guy who, he even offered me a job. He said he'd give me a job in a bank in the city. What is Vatican intelligence? Is it like Italian intelligence?
It's a mixture. It goes in between. If they want to get away with something, they claim to be Vatican intelligence, but really they're Italian intelligence, all of them. But they flip in between.
Sure.
But I think Vatican intelligence is basically, they're the mafia for the nobles.
Yeah.
So this big family, they want to shut me up. So they try and find a way. So they I in the previous year, in October time, October.
What year? Sorry?
This is 2024.
Okay.
I'm sitting in the cafe, my local cafe where I do my work, and this former Italian supermodel who's 6'7", absolutely gorgeous, comes, sits next to me and starts chatting me up. And like, I don't laugh. I can see you laughing.
You must have known right away,
dude. I knew right away.
Yeah, but knowing you would have played about.
Well, no, it's the thing is that what I did was I found it really funny. So I instantly started talking about Nicole Younkerman. I was like, "Oh, you're Italian, are you? Oh, well, I know this." And I wrote this article on blah blah blah. Countess Bracetti, and I go on, and she goes, "Oh, really?" And then she kept asking me out on dates over and over and over again, and I kept putting it off. And it's hard to keep putting off a 6'7" sexy lady. I gotta be honest. But like that's serious death threat stuff.
Yeah,
And there was another guy who was with her there, and they call him in the cafe. They call him the Salamander now.
Why?
He wiggled into my life. Possibly, he came back in January. They went away for Christmas, which is a Vatican thing. They came back. He came back in January, February, and he put on a massive charm offensive. He had an interpreter, and basically he started becoming my best friend, taking me out for meals, and I knew what it was.
Just trying to find out what you knew.
Yeah. Every night. He would take me out. Yeah. We'd have a nice meal. We'd have a load of drinks. Yeah. And right at the end, he'd ask me one question about Nicole Younkerman. Just one. It was always at the end. And he looked like, he had this guilty dog look on his face when he did it as well. Yeah. And it was really super hyper normalized. I knew what he was doing. I think he knew I knew.
Yeah.
And we were in a middle of something which is, it's hard to explain to people, but you don't want to, like, if you can handle the handler, then and they're not killing you or throttling you, and they're showing their face to everyone around you, then that's not a sign that they're about to kill you. Sure. It's a sign that it's something else. And if I get that person out of my life, I could be replaced by the garotter, the guy who's going to garrot me.
Might as well keep him in if he's buying you drinks. Hang out, have a nice time.
He was buying me £100 steak.
There you go.
$100 steak.
Just take him to a more expensive restaurant every single night.
Well, he took me to Pasture in Cardiff, and we had the Chateaubriand. It was brilliant. And over the Chateaubriand, over the $100 steak, is when he said, "So I have this friend. He's setting up a bank in December. You can have a job. You won't have to go into work. You won't have to do anything. You'll be paid £5,000 a month."
How does someone like that, who's pretending not to be intelligent, how do they introduce themselves? Especially, you said he needed an interpreter. So how does he come in? Does he just what coffee are you drinking? Is that a latte? That's fascinating. Strike up a conversation.
No, but it's pretty easy with me because I talk with absolutely everyone.
Sure.
So I'm not like when I sit in that coffee shop. Everybody who goes in there knows me.
Sure.
They either know me from quiz night, they know me from our conversations. They know me because I bought them a drink, or they know me because we just live in the same community, and they know what people have started to work out what I do, and that it's a bit freaky.
Sure.
I mean, this situation got pretty. I think this situation showed everybody who lived in my community what was going on, because they all got to meet these people too and see these people. And this guy in July of 2025 disappeared. Went back to Italy. So I go back for a bit and I come back. Disappeared and just cut off his WhatsApp.
Okay.
Yeah, we know that I could no longer. I didn't message me here and there. We wouldn't get anything. That had run its course. There was he had offered me a job for £5,000 a month where I wouldn't have to do anything and work in a bank. And I said to him, "No, mate, I'm a journalist. Sorry." But
you were missing the £100 steaks after that.
Oh no. I know how to. I know how to enjoy the $100 steak when I got it, mate. I know how to enjoy. But I, so I was, I was very happy about that. He went off and did whatever. I continued to work really hard over 2025, and then in about October, November, I got I started suing Nicole Youngman. So I put the first step, which has to be redone as well because of what they did next. But basically, I put in a letter before action. Because of the Substack stuff. I had finally had that evidence and multiple other evidence, and I had there was 6-7 other people she had targeted because of my work in there. So I had other people who were witnesses and who'd also been negatively affected and were all journalists. So suddenly I put in a letter before action on the Monday. On the Friday, the Vatican contact me and they say, "Hey, I am speaking on behalf of Bishop McCanzin of the Vatican, and we want you to come over and we want to talk with you. And will you have a meeting?" So I said, "Okay, we'll have a meeting over Zoom." So I met Bishop McCanzin and his translator Anna over Zoom, and they were like really positive and happy, and were like, "You should come over." And I was like, "What is it for, though?" Because I knew what it was. And they were like, I was like, "What is it for?" And they said, "Oh, you can help us. We can help you. You're a good journalist."
Okay.
And I was like, all right. And so I agreed. I said, I'm always someone who, when there's no in my vocabulary, if someone says, "Do you want to," as you said, "Do you want to come?" I was like, "Okay, I'll just come down and do it." I like saying yes, man.
Sure.
It's a much better world like that because you learn what really is going on. And
it's still not to the point where you're going to go to the Vatican and you're just going to vanish. It's not got to that point yet.
So I almost so I'll explain this in short form. I agreed to go to the Vatican on the 9th of December. And I knew I went down to Luton on the 8th, stayed in this horrible hotel. I knew straight away everything was going to be bad anyway. But had to not think about anything that was going to happen until I got on the plane, because otherwise I wouldn't get on the plane, because it was a madness to get on that plane really and go into this, because I knew this was probably a trap by Countess Peretti, and this was them using the Vatican in some way, and I didn't know what it was going to be yet, but there was a chance that I might end up in Italian prison at some point during this. So I was like, when I got on the plane, I'm like, oh, I typed my last will and testament. I sent it to my friend, and I said, my best friend, and I said, listen, if anything happens to me, just this was a basic will and testament to say what I'd like, where I'd like stuff go. I contacted some other friends. I said, if you don't hear from me in an hour, in a day, contact Italian police, because I've been arrested. I said there's a chance I'm going to be arrested straight getting off the plane. I believe this was, and I wasn't that wrong. So I booked myself a seat right up front, so I'd be the first off the plane to just cut out all of the crap.
Just walked out with your hands like this.
Yeah, basically.
Ready,
So I walked out with my passport in hand, ready. And it was 5 policemen waiting for me on the tarmac.
Right.
They instantly they're pointing at me. They're so excited. They had their guy straight away. I was the first one off the plane. They couldn't believe it. They took me across the airport. They took me through passport control. They took me, got my luggage, took me to a room. 8 police officers, Italian police officers, searched and interrogated me as they ripped open my bags in front of me. They pushed me. They tried to intimidate me. I told them that they were a dirty bunch of rotten bastards who were working on behalf of a dead child trafficker called Jeffrey Epstein, because that's who I've been reporting on. And their protection of Count Peretti and Countess Peretti, because to hide the fact that their links with Epstein makes them the worst people on earth, and they should be ashamed of themselves. And I tell you, none of those Italian police expected to have that in their face.
Well, I imagine they didn't know what they were doing. They were just told to go there. Oh, right, okay.
The rest of them didn't know what they were doing. The rest of them, once they worked out what this was, once they started hearing me speak, you saw the one woman especially, just like she was uncomfortable, and she could see the guy said this was normal, that everybody gets this. 150 people on my plane get escorted by 5 police officers through, have their luggage ripped apart, get pushed. It got to a point where they were standing there and it was surreal. And they were like, Jeffrey Epstein's dead anyway, Jeffrey Epstein's dead. And I was like, yeah, but Countess Peretti isn't dead. Peter Thiel isn't dead. You know, Hugo Peretti isn't dead. All of these people aren't dead, so they should be held to account, shouldn't they? And it got to a point where there was like, it was about 4 of them who were almost chanting into Jeffrey Epstein's dead, Jeffrey Epstein. It was just ludicrous. And it was like, okay, I got to get out of here. I think they had fought from the vetting from what the intelligence they had picked up in Cardiff. I think they had worked out that I smoked blunts every day, and they were hoping that I would have brought a blunt with me, so they could arrest me.
Why you're ripping open your bag and everything.
And so when they didn't find anything, because I'm not an addict, because I don't smoke tobacco, so I don't have to smoke weed. I did when I smoked tobacco, because I had to smoke tobacco. But I'm not addicted to weed, so they had to leave me go. They were like, oh, it's fine now, we can be friends and all this. And they were like, we'll see you when you get back. We'll see you when you're on your way out. And they made it clear. They wanted to intimidate me. So I was shouting at them, giving them hell, walked out of the airport. And there was this guy waiting for me with a sign saying Johnny Vedmore on it. And I went up, I said, where are you from? He said, the hotel has sent me. I've been sent by the hotel. I work for a company that works with the hotel. And He was nervous as hell. It was clear straight away. Marco, he was really super nervous. Later on, the hotel told me that they didn't send him, and he hadn't been from the hotel at all. I don't know who sent Marco, really. But I got in the car, and he drove me to near the hotel, and the hotel was right on St. Peter's Cathedral, right on the border of the Vatican. It was this really fantastic. It used to be an old monastery. They had booked me in. The Vatican had booked me into right on the grounds, and he dropped me off 150 yards before and said, "I can't go down there because it gets a bit busy. Can you walk down there yourself?"
Such a good relationship with the hotel.
When I started to walk down there, what I don't know is someone's taking the picture of me. That's one of the moments where someone's taking a picture.
Okay.
So he's dropped me off early so that someone could take a picture of me. Then I meet with the Vatican's people, and they told me that the first thing they told me is that they had a camera that could see ghosts, and the ghosts are on in people's arms, and you can tell if they're good or bad. And I knew straight away, it's like, okay, this is good. And then they offered me a publishing deal. They were like, we'll help you to self-publish. And I was like, I didn't act like that. I was like, oh, really? Okay.
This is straight in with the ghost camera and the self-publishing, nothing about Youngkerman.
Straight away. And they said, "Will if you have this book, will Countess Brachetti-Peretti be in the book?" And I said, probably, yeah, I would think so. Yeah. And they said, oh, okay. Well, we'll meet tomorrow. You'll meet Bishop McCann. The day I was meeting Anna and this guy Giorgio, and he said, you'll meet Bishop McCann tomorrow. Yeah. He's obviously extremely busy. He's a Vatican bishop, and we'll discuss it further. So I went out. I went to the audience with the Pope the next day with Anna, where it was organised. We didn't have any queues, of course. When I went to Sistine Chapel, the same. I got let in the special doors and stuff.
The fast pass to the Vatican.
Fast pass to the Vatican completely. I was in the back door, and I knew just before the meeting with Bishop McCann, I knew I was being followed. I had felt it all day, but I had tagged like one guy I had been watching carefully. This one guy following me quite a distance away as well. He was about 100,
when you were out
yards.
In Rome.
Yeah, just walking around Rome, and I'd been watching him for a while. So I was talking to the guy Scott from History Homo's podcast. I was talking to him on the phone. I was like, I'm being followed by a guy right now. So I went around the corner by my hotel. I waited for a little bit, and then I ran around the corner really quickly, and this guy went and ran off down the street. So I was like, I really do think that. So I thought I was being followed, but I thought, okay, tongue in cheek, that was a bit funny. So I went back next day. I met Bishop McCann, and Bishop McCann, Giorgio and Anna, we met at this swanky rooftop restaurant, very beautiful, extremely expensive, and they told me. And they did it again. They told me they knew who the Antichrist was, and they would tell me, and I would be able to reveal it to the world.
I think Peter Thiel's got that covered already.
Yeah, I know. I was like, I think I might have said, was it Peter Thiel?
Yeah. Have you watched the recent South Park season?
No.
He's got a whole, every time he enters a room, he's like, I'm Peter Thiel and I know about the Antichrist. Does this whole musical number, and he does like a presentation in front of the whole school, and they're like, what is this about? He's
the last song on the Jeffrey Epstein podcast, the musical.
I watched a bit of that yesterday. That was mental. Yeah.
Great. So they told me that, and then they got back onto the book, and they asked me if I could write up a synopsis of chapters, and then they again asked me, would Countess Brachetti-Peretti need to be in the book? And I said, yes, you'll have to be in every single chapter. I really went at her. I was like, literally every single chapter. Yeah. I said, I'll write a synopsis tomorrow, and we'll meet again tomorrow. And the next day, I go and I do the Sistine Chapel tour. It's beautiful. I'm a bit emotional afterwards. I go have a walk cry, like you do when you have something quite intense going on, and then you see something that like a load of really beautiful stuff. And then later on, I went to a cafe and I sat down. I drank 4 ginger beers in an hour while I wrote this synopsis for the chapters. And it was a really good, I mean, I've already thought up multiple ideas for books. I've already partially written some books. So I'm already like able to do this. And I thought I'll write down this idea. It's like father and son idea in chapters, like a chapter about the father, a chapter about the son, in all of these different elites. And it would be a very interesting book. But it was just an idea to present to them in a form. And so I wrote that, and as I came around, I was buying some tobacco for a friend, and then I had to meet them, and I thought it was at this bar around the corner. I'd actually got the wrong place, but we ended up meeting there anyway. And it was just one side street to go. And I was putting on my music. I carry one of these Sonos Roams
always walking around with that. Yeah.
I've always got music playing, like, so I was putting it on in my bag, and this guy cycled across the road. I kept feeling it was the same guy from Cardiff.
Right.
He had a scarf up over his face. He had sunglasses on. He had hat pulled right over. Came up, cycled up, and he pushed this envelope into my chest. And I was like, "Whoa, what's going on, geezer?" And then he cycled off. I realized that could have been the moment where I was shot in Rome. Really. I mean, so I instantly got my camera out, and I was like, "Okay, I'm going to record this." So I recorded myself opening up, but it was pictures of me walking around Rome, including a picture of me walking to my hotel because I had my luggage with me the only time when Marco had just dropped me off, and that had to be in a setup. So that made me go to the hotel afterwards and question whether they had sent a taxi, and they told me they hadn't sent it. So that's when I found out.
So like what's going, do you just rip it open? Do you have any ideas that like this might be some chemical agent in an envelope?
Yeah, no, I that's why I recorded it as I was doing. I was like, I've half opened it.
Didn't think just maybe just bin it and walk away.
I know. I'm an investigative journalist. I'm an investigative journalist. You don't do like something I say to people. Loads of people said to me before I went to Italy, you shouldn't go to Italy. Yeah, and I said that isn't what an investigator does. I'm an investigative journalist. I've got to investigate, and that's where the center of the investigation is pointing. And they're giving me an access to say something that I wouldn't get anywhere else. After that happened, I've called them up. I said, something's just happened. Come meet me at this other place. They come over, they meet me at this other place. We have this direct conversation. They told me in that conversation that Nicole Younkerman had been working with it turns out, they said, we looked through the Vatican archives, and they showed me these what looked like faked emails between Nicole Younkerman and Cardinal, and it claimed that Nicole Younkerman was working on for the Vatican to take down Jeffrey Epstein, right? And it was like so ludicrous, so super ludicrous, and that because of that, and this was the nub of it, because of that, she was now obliged to speak with the Vatican, and because I was in communication with them, we could now negotiate between. So that's what it was always going to be: setting up, seeing if they could intimidate me first by chasing me around, by scaring
just literally
me,
trying everything.
Trying everything,
charming you with steak and
charming me with steak, and then potentially a stake through the heart. Because when I said to him clearly, I am not stopping. I want, you can tell Nicole Younkerman, I want exactly what the letter before action said. Nothing's changed. I'm angrier and more determined than ever right now. And then I realized, well, Marco's going to pick me up in the morning at 8:30 to take me to the airport, and I don't really want to get into the car
whether you're going
Marco.
to the airport or not to the airport, you don't really want to get in that car.
On the way home, I recorded the entire time, made it look like I was live streaming. I posted it up as well, and some of it is a bit teary, some of it's a bit emotional,
of course,
some of it's a bit tense, like, but it's very honest as well. I basically I did that, and then when I got back to the hotel, I went to the police who were on the Vatican, and I told them what had just happened, and they said that they weren't going to take the report, and that I'd have to go to the police station in the morning. Right. And I was like, yeah, I see.
You'll probably be there anyway.
Yeah. I'll probably be in the morgue. So I went back to a hotel. I talked with a few people. I had someone who was offering me to help me get across the border of Switzerland if I went up by train. There's no Schengen zone. It's Schengen zone, so there's no passports between Italy and Switzerland.
I've driven through there, so
so I could skip across the border and not be noticed. I'd probably have to. There was someone who was looking at how to go on and off trains to get to. So
which at this point they were probably expecting you might do anyway.
Yeah, maybe. But it does make a difference. For them, by the time it got to about 1-2 o'clock, I would consider them all asleep, ready to do whatever they needed to do in the morning. And so what I did was I posted up a picture of because I had posted up these things online to make sure everybody knew what was going on. I posted up a picture of a table against my hotel room door and said I'd taken security precautions, etc. But I was going to post that out when I was already in the taxi heading towards the hotel. I bought heading towards the airport. I always say hotel for airport. I don't know why. I booked the first plane out of Dodge. I was going whatever the first plane was. I was going to book, and it turned out to be Luton. Right. So I was like, good. So 6 o'clock in the morning, so I could arrive at 4 o'clock in the morning at the thing. I went down. I had a conversation with the hotel staff who were like the night manager was like. I recorded it as well, so it's up online as well. He was like, where the Vatican, they've been doing this for over 1,000 years,
at this very hotel.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by any of this. And so I asked him if he could get me somebody who could, a taxi driver who he knew, who wasn't connected with the hotel, wasn't connected with any of the company, to get me to the airport. Sure. And he promised me he could, and he was a very nice guy. And so they snuck me out at about 2:30, and a guy called Fabrizio, who was completely clueless, and I sent him to the wrong airport. So 2-3 minutes into the journey, I said to him, he was explained he has to go at high speed and make sure he's not being followed by the police. If we're being followed by the police or any other cars, we got to go back to the hotel and start again. Sure. I can't. So I sent him to the wrong airport first, and then he had to change. Right. And so we could see if anybody was following. I could see if anybody was following. And he swung through the streets of Rome in the night. I was open the window. I was screaming, Fabrizio!
Yeah.
I was like,
got your trilby hat on, proper film noir.
It was honestly, I knew how wonderfully liberating it felt because I was there. I was just like, I'm getting out of Dodge.
Yeah.
I got to it was beautiful. This was beautiful. I got to the airport. It was this little airport in Rome. It wasn't the big one. I got to this little airport. And I was like buzzing. I was like, I'm getting out of Dodge, baby. I guessed that they would wait till the last moments to get the airport security to try and stop me. Right. And that would be at the other airport probably. But they would, and that shift would probably start about 6, 7, 8 o'clock. So they wouldn't get any of those orders until I was already on the plane and going out. Sure. So that was what was on my mind. I turned up at the airport and I was like, I'm going to make friends with all of the airport staff. I'm going to make friends with all of the airport security. And there was this stage and there was a guitar sitting there on a stage, and it said, come be a star, play this guitar. And it was just there on stage. And I was just like, I should really be low key right now. I'm not going to be low key. And I sat on the stage and I played guitar for about 2 hours. I played some classical pieces. I played some Beatles stuff like Blackbird, Norwegian Wood. I've played guitar since I was 15 years old. I've been in bands before, but I sang a couple of little bits here and there. I smiled at everybody. I sang to the cleaners. I sang to the security staff. And by the time I was getting on the plane, everybody in the airport was kind of my friend, and all of the staff were my friend. Everybody was smiling. Yeah. And when that plane went up into the air, I was like,
I wonder what the Vatican felt watching that security footage back afterwards. Do you think they enjoyed your gig, or they were just seething the whole time?
I don't know.
Oh, he got away from us, but he's actually pretty good.
I don't
that
know.
Beatles number was banging.
I don't know if they would have. I don't know if they would have seen the airport security, but by the time Marco turned up, I got a message like I was already waiting to get on to get the train back to Cardiff, and I was just.
Did you message him back?
We had a conversation afterwards,
right?
Because I did the podcast with History Homos and said the entire thing that happened, and they said you shouldn't have told people our names. And I said, you shouldn't have set up to intimidate me on behalf of a child trafficking paedophile. I mean, there's one and t'other, you know. Which one's worse? I don't know. I know. Maybe I shouldn't have said your names. Maybe you shouldn't be working for an out of control deep state. And a religious organization and pretending to be good when you're actually evil and all of that. So, and then the guy, I hadn't spoken to him since July. The moment I cut off the Vatican, the very moment, he contacted me for the first time and was like, Johnny, how are you? I haven't seen you. Sorry, I haven't seen you. Literally, directly afterwards, same day.
Right.
Then he was round my house. He was round taking pictures in the same cafe, saying, "Look, I'm at the cafe, waiting for you." I went into the cafe. There's a note there saying, "Oh, he's bought you a free coffee," and stuff. And he's banging on my window. He's banging on my front window, and it's all back round to the. It's again now that the Epstein files has revealed Younkerman's bizarre role. Everybody is talking about it. The entire, I feel in a sense my life has changed again abruptly because I had to put up with a lot of censorship. I had to put up with a lot of intimidation. I had to put up with her ruining parts of my career. I had to put up with her having people come to my home. I had to put up with being chased around Rome, being threatened, being just every form of abuse and harassment was and there was a fear. There was a fear that she could go that step further, and there still is a fear. Maybe she's a vengeful lady and she'll feel like maybe that I'm the one to take down, but
seems like she's got more problems now.
Well, one thing I said to the Vatican, and this is possibly a dangerous thing to say because I got so many enemies from so many different doing so many different articles, but I will say this. One of the things I said to the Vatican in our last meeting, when they told me that they had the ability to negotiate on behalf of Countess Peretti, was that what she's doing is idiotic and she hasn't thought it through for one reason. If I was to explode in flames, if a pigeon was to fall out of the sky and hit me on the head and I was to die, if the most bizarre series of events was to happen and they were just all by accident, everybody would assume that I've been murdered by Nicole Younkerman. And that Countess Peretti is responsible for my death. And everybody will forever talk. And they will never be able to go into another place and not hear the name Johnny Vedmore over and over again. And does she really want that? I don't think she does. And that's what my last words were to them, is that she's put herself in a situation where if anything, absolutely anything happens to me, she'll be the one people point at. So really, she wants to keep me safe. Is
this still continuing now? Is the guy still coming and knocking on your window and taking you out for dinner?
I messaged him. I told him we're going to have a serious conversation. He should chill completely. That I'm not gonna, I purposely did not respond to any of his. I feel sorry for my housemate who had to be like, sorry man, Italian intelligence are banging on the window again. Can you tell him to fuck off? Sorry, but that's exactly what was going on. His monkey was going out, being like, get out, mate. What are you doing? You know, and so I likely he'll come back again. but I mean, I think it's a different thing this time. I don't know. I don't know, because I don't know whether there's any point in it. Because what's the point in trying to intimidate me or anything to stop me talking about Nicole Youngkerman when everyone else is talking about Nicole Youngkerman?
Are you going to write the book still?
Yeah. I think about writing it in a couple of different ways. Not the book that I was suggesting to them, but the book about my time, Youngkerman in general, and everything that happened, because some of it's wild, some of it's really super wild, and some of it I haven't quite told him for. But there's also, I started writing a kind of a Raoul Duke version of it,
right?
Like, I started I say that Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas,
okay,
sort of,
sure.
Hunter S. Thompson, sort of, like, because I can write the same book with all factual, but have it as this wild adventure that it actually was.
I think just telling your experience like you just did is just mental. There's something people would love to hear about.
There's different ways to describe it, and there's different ways that it'll fit. But I think there's I think it's a bit like, it's cowboy journalism to an extent. It's I don't know what you'd call it. I do live in a world where that's one example. Now I have people come into my life and try and feed me stories regularly, not come into my physical realm, but will message me and be like, "Oh, I've got some information that can help you." I also, in the Epstein case, I've had very famous people, including people who claim to be victims, who, one of them, the evidence is that she worked for the CIA.
Right.
Another one who's a very famous journalist who everybody knows very well, and wrote a very famous book about the Franklin scandal. And the Lady Victoria Hervey, Prince Andrew's friend. These are all people who contact me and try and sell me a pup, try and sell me a lie, try and sell me something that isn't true, that I'll then report, and then it'll ruin my name. And so what these people really don't understand is my process is that I never report on what other people give me.
Do you never get anything helpful from anyone actually trying to help?
Yes. But I don't report on it in the way they expect me to report on it. So I had it recently. There's so I won't name the entire details. I can't name the entire details because of an injunction. But there is a Premier League boss who someone came to me who had been a victim of this person and gave me a load of information. And I started the investigation and started to go down the route. And they were expecting me to go one way and just report things like a journalist would do. But what I do is I try and understand what will actually make an effect in the case in the real world. What will change the game. A game changer would be to undermine the injunction that stops you speaking about things, or etc. And for that, you need someone who's willing to be balls out and is willing to do a little bit of time in prison if it needs to be for contempt of court or something like that. So where people will look for a journalist who can be like, they'll come to me and they'll say, "I got this information." Well, I'll go and look for more about that, and I'll find something else and a different angle. Right. And different angles, once I see the angle that's the most that allows to explain the truth in the easiest way, then I'll go with that angle, because that's how stories are. And this is what I'm saying, like with the Vatican stuff. I could write that story in a standard article, professional article form, like I normally do, long form investigative journalist, or I could write it in a much more like satirical form, and it would have an effect in loads of different ways, and those are all different angles and perspectives to see a story from, but as long as it all contains the truth. It's like the Jeffrey Epstein podcast, the musical.
Yeah.
It's a very silly thing, but when you actually look at it, because I know so much about the case and I've done so much research, all of it's relatively factual, or it's tongue-in-cheek parody of the way the case is viewed. And for that, it allows people to view things in all different sorts of ways. And things that like I've explained in 3 articles that people won't be willing to put in the time to read, they can understand from one song.
Yeah, of course.
So it's
digestible information.
Yeah. So I try and find a different way to describe tough cases, and a lot of people they don't understand that straight away. So when someone comes to me with a story, they think I'm just going to report what they say, and that's never the way it is. And if I do that, I would always fall for the trap. It almost happened once before where I got down to almost publishing an article, and the premise of the article was based on one false piece of information.
Right.
And it was only when I was like, okay, finals drafting stage, I've got down to the finish of the article, I'm now going to question it objectively. I'm going to be really negative. I'm going to straw man and strong man every single line in it, like I do with articles, and see if I still agree with it. And I got to this one point where I was like, this guy's picture's missing from this profile.
Yeah.
And then I realized, from going through archives, that guy's picture's purposely been taken off so that I would make that mistake, and it's a different guy.
Right.
And it was meant to make me make a massive mistake. You know?
I think it's nice that it must be so much work to do all that research and then make it digestible. One of the things I really like about your work on NEWSPASTE, and this is how I digested your Pottinger series, was that you go back, you write the article, but then you go back and you read it for people. And I think that alone, people get like a massive drop, like, what is it, like 3 million different bits of information with the newest Epstein drop, and people go, okay, like, unless you're someone like my cousin who goes and like wants to get through as much of it as possible. And I was telling you about her yesterday. She's creating a PDF of basically everything she's written, which is not something most people do either. But she said she's gone back to she's like hyperlinked different pages of it, and they're slowly getting removed. Things she's already looked at, she can't go and find anymore. So the fact you make it digestible and put it into musical form is just so much better for people as well.
Archive everything, archive absolutely everything, and keep the archived versions rather than the standard versions. Is the one of the best way, though I don't know how long Wayback Machine will last. It is a bone of contention for those who want to cover up information. The storing of data for public access. That's
do you like download it all? Because I know some people like they'll do like a Google Drive, but I imagine that's not safe either because it's still in the cloud, so people can go and like delete your things if they want to.
Mostly archive all information, but I also what you're like with the Pottinger, and I try and do this as much as I can, but with the Pottinger Identity, the first of the Pottinger articles, you can listen to the read through, you can watch the read through. There's a 6-part documentary that I've made with it that also goes over the information in another way, in a different way, and all the links and the hyperlinks have been saved. All of the newspaper articles have been screenshotted, so if they ever go down, I can replace them with the screenshot. Right. All of these, and they do. I go back. I regularly go back to my older articles, go through the links, and then find out. This is how in the Elon Musk article, Musk Epstein, the third culture. The last, I think it's in that article, the last video link in there, like this little video, was a Nicole Junkerman article, and it was linked up to Rumble Video, owned by Peter Thiel, one of course, Junkerman's associates.
Yeah.
And I clicked on it, and it went through, and it said this video no longer exists. And from doing that, I was able to tell, and I hadn't been informed that Rumble had deleted the free Junkerman read-throughs without even telling me. And so the freedom of speech platform.
I was going to say, all the people I follow, they post things on Rumble because it's not YouTube, so they won't get demonetized. And I had this idea that Rumble was the safest place to be, even more than Substack.
Chris Pavlovsky, who runs Rumble, I went at him publicly on X, and it took 6-7 months for him to reinstate them, but they had to reinstate them eventually. But still, even those guys, I mean, they're cheeky. Rumble's cheeky. So during the pandemic, I did a interview with a guy you weren't allowed to talk to.
Right.
Not a guy who he was interviewing me about an article called The Welcome Five, which was about a lot of the main people who were behind the pandemic, who were not in public office and made all of the decisions.
Not like Fauci. Other people.
Higher than Fauci. So
right,
Fauci and Whitty, when BuzzFeed did a Freedom of Information request, they discovered that Whitty and Fauci were told to go to Jeremy Farrar of the Wellcome Trust, the head of the Wellcome Trust, for everything.
Right.
And he was the one who was central to the cover-up, the proximal origin of SARS-CoV-2 paper, which was a fake cover-up paper, and all of the people involved in that was partially what the article was about. Well, I posted that up to the interview up to YouTube, and YouTube hadn't registered it. It was with a guy called Rainer Fulmick. And they don't like Rainer Fulmick. Anything gets striked. And it had been up there, the Rainer Fulmick interview. I'd put it up, but I'd purposely not written in Rainer Fulmick's name or anything. I'd actually even coded the title, so you couldn't really tell what it was about. And
they wouldn't have been able to tell from I know YouTube does like transcription and things.
Yeah, but they didn't. It had been up for 1 year.
Yeah.
It had been up for 1 year, untouched. And I put it up on Rumble. No, I put it up on Rumble. I marked all of the boxes, clicked it. As I clicked it, a notification came through from YouTube that they blocked my Rainer Fulmick video.
Right.
And I had posted that up to Rumble. And when I had posted up to Rumble had informed YouTube. And YouTube had taken it down straight away.
Right.
Straight away, directly. They're linked somehow in a way that we can't see.
Right.
So that suggests that Rumble is something else. And Peter Thiel, the guy who had a
Everybody's
Palantir,
favourite guy, yeah.
I mean, Satan himself.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
What do you
He knows about the
expect?
Antichrist.
Yeah. So I mean, go and check in your links. Can also find, because I ended up writing a couple of articles about that because and it was a good way to point out that Rumble isn't working for the good guys, or at least isn't showing themselves to be working for the good guys, and shows how vast. Or the breadth of Nicole Junkerman's censorship campaign against me, that she can go to an anti-censorship platform and have my articles taken down. That's wild.
What's the safest thing then? Because like you say, Rumble's compromised, clearly Substack's compromised, obviously YouTube. So is it just your own stuff, your own website? Can they take stuff down on that as well?
Zero answer. Back everything up. Get ready for the change, the sea change of public opinion to go one way then the other. People to accept information for 2 years and then be told to refuse information for 2 years and then back again to take information. Expect to be constantly left not knowing what you're allowed to watch or what you're not allowed to watch, which is the whole point of it. The whole point of this is being like the whole system they're setting up is to mean that you never know what's real or not, and you don't know where you are. And so what is that question? I can't answer it. I'd love to have an answer, but there is no answer. The reality is that you can't trust YouTube, you can't trust Rumble, you can't trust X, you can't trust Facebook, you can't trust. And if you go back to 2008 or 2009 and you look at the Edge masterclasses funded by Epstein, you'll see that every single head of all of these companies were being trained by Epstein themselves on how to manipulate you by using social media. So big tech ain't gonna help you out. You save the information elsewhere. But I think the answer is, and this is really important, is bringing it back home to your local community, having the conversations in your local community. That's a really hard thing to do. People for years, people who lived in my community thought that I made things up. They were unwilling to read any of my articles. They would not watch anything that I do.
Yeah.
And they had just believed that because I oppose this or I research the Epstein case, that I'm fake news because they've been programmed to do that.
Everybody's got such an idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now they've experienced a load. And I knew it would happen. When the pandemic was happening, I was on a different side of the fence of most of the people in my community, and some people got very angry with me.
Yeah. I got that. I was on that side before.
Yeah,
I got very angry. I nearly split apart with my family at one point because I got really upset about it all.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I can understand it, but I also knew at that time the most important thing was to remain being friends with people who oppose your opinion and not be offended by the fact that someone else has got a different vision of the world, and understand that, of course, when I know how they manipulate people by using tier 1 black ops psychological warfare on people, well, of course people are going to be confused, and of course people are going to be tricked, and of course that's going to happen. So the important thing is to be patient with people who you want to strangle, and you want to say, oh my God, look, it's all the evidence is all around you. The world is not what you think it is. Instead, we all got to chill out loads. We got to remember that what they make us, if they want to make us strangle each other, then we got to not strangle each other. That's how we win the game. And that means we need to have conversations in the community, and for that you need to be open. You need to be there afterwards. And loads of people now, there's a lovely lady, I think I mentioned her yesterday. I mean, we had a conversation recently. I understand it's a bit frustrating when someone thinks that you're a mad liar, and then they understand that you're not, and everything that you've been writing about is proven in 1 week to be true, and they go from one thing to the other. She was like, I thought you were just talking nonsense and you were lying all the time. And I was like, do you realize how rude that is? Do you realize how rude not to even look at anything that I've done, not to even check it out, but to assume? And the fact is me and her are good friends.
Right.
We're not going to be enemies. She knows that she can say she knows she can say that I thought you were lying for the whole time, and I'll still hug her at the end of the day, and that we'll still do quiz night together every now and again, and they'll still blame me for when they lose.
And like, you know, it could be the thing where like you might even disagree on something later down the line, but that's fine, and you know that you can still be friends, and you can agree on quote someone said, I can't remember who it was, but you will never agree with every single person on every single thing. Even former versions of yourself you would not agree with. So it's that thing of like, oh yeah, like we can sort of listen to what each other have to say. I find it really difficult when I try to explain things to people like COVID, because it's still the mainstream narrative, and like nobody talks about it anymore. They just go, oh yeah, it was this thing from a wet market, and you go and you come in with something like, do you know about Event 201 and Bill Gates and this whole thing? And they're like, oh, you're a bit of a tinfoil hat wearing psychopath.
Do you know
aren't you?
that
And
they've
it's like,
already admitted that it came from a lab?
Yeah.
Do you know that they've already had congressional tests?
But because nobody's talking about it, it's like all the, like you say, all the boosted news stories, they talked about it before, but nobody's interested in it now, because that was then and this is now. Those are two different things. It must be incredibly frustrating to put all the work in that you're doing, and then to sometimes get it silenced as well.
Is it not frustrating for everybody? Because I mean, the people who believe they know it, they all have to go through this realization that they've been lied to. That's part of fifth generation warfare too, is to realize that the world of yesteryear is all a lie. I hear lots of people at the moment say, you know, is any of the system? I thought the political system actually, you know, is anybody good in there? It's like you have to. There's a certain point where you have to realize that you're saying over and over again, political system good, because the masters in control of the media are part of the political system, and it works for them and it keeps them protected. There's points where these uncomfortable truths are going to be revealed to these people. Everybody in your community is going to come out, and those conversations then need to be had at home, and they need to be had not through a lens of arguing, not in a way to deplete someone else's ego or to rise your own ego. That's one of the main problems, is that a lot of people, you know, are ego driven, it's really easy to be ego driven as well. I said. There was a guy, Mike Benz. He's pretty famous. He went on my show before. He is not very happy with me at the moment because I said to him, "You're way behind on the Epstein case, and you need to catch up." And I posted a couple of things, and I was talking about something else,
right?
And he thought I was talking about something else, and his ego got so hurt, and he didn't understand what I was talking about because he was so far behind on the Epstein case.
Sure.
So it was true that he was far, but because I approached it and broached it by saying you are far behind, and he's got such a massive ego that once touched, like, is so brittle and causes him to shout at people. He didn't look at what I had posted or what I said and just started shouting at me, and that was a sign that it's like, okay, we were actually on the same side, and part of my problem was I evoked his ego. It's not good that he's got an ego. He should get rid of that ego.
Yeah.
But if it's there,
But you want to keep your friends.
It,
you want to keep people who are close to you in the same sphere. And
I don't know if he had. He also ran something called the Frame Game, which was
you mentioned that yesterday. What is that?
It was a Zionist plot to propagate anti-Zionist rhetoric online. So he was pretending to be he was basically pretending to be an anti-Semite online, and posting out loads of anti-Semitic stuff so that people feel, oh, these poor guys, and in actual fact, it's a Zionist media ploy to raise to cause issue about questioning powerful Jewish people who were in control of stuff, which is basically what our present world is.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people going, well, there's a lot of issues with these Zionists, and it's not true. It's like with the Vatican. The average, as Scott called them, the workaday Catholics, they say, they're fine.
Yeah.
The everyday Jewish people, they're dudes. Yeah. They're really nice. Scott himself is Scott Abrams, so I mean...
Well, that's how they took down Jeremy Corbyn, wasn't it? Yeah. It was the really good Al Jazeera documentary, the Labour Files, I think it was, and they were talking all about like Labour Friends of Israel, and it's they're rooted directly in, was it Momentum, the young Labour movement, right? Yeah. And it's like, it's not everyday Jews, but it's a lobby organisation like any other lobby organisation, whether it's pharma, whether it's weapons, or whether it's a special interest group with it's a lot of people with a lot of money, and it doesn't mean that there's a lot of Jews with all the money that are controlling the world. It just means that there are some people in any other sphere who have a lot of money, who have a special interest, and will do whatever they can.
And they usually work for the state.
Yeah.
And that's those interest groups work for the Israeli state, and you've got other interest groups working for the British state and for the French and Americans and Canadians. You know, someone said people find when someone says to you like something like, "Have you got any handlers?" And they kind of laugh like, I probably currently right now, I probably got about 11 to 12 handlers that I know of that are from different agencies that I know they're not who they say they are.
Got to catch them all.
I've already investigated them in part.
Yeah.
And I also know their methods and their techniques, and I know what they're doing, and I know why they're doing it. But I also know that it's best to have some form of vision of what they're doing rather than just to block those people out. You've got to hear all sides, including the people who are trying to manipulate you. But if you know they're trying to manipulate you, then you've got the upper hand, and you don't have to go for it, and you don't have to fall for it. But it's worth seeing what the game looks like because you're involved in the game. And all of the game, a lot of politics and stuff. You know, if people want to discuss politics and want to discuss society and want it to be comfortable, then you don't want to discuss politics or society.
Sure.
Because none of it's comfortable. It's all about doing something you don't want to do on behalf of some greater good. And they often pose that, the state poses that as this thing of why you should be ashamed or why you should be sad about. You should want to live your life in the way you want to live your life.
Yeah.
You should do all of the things as long as you're not hurting anyone else, as long as it's all consensual, as long as it's all above board and we can all agree on it. You should be able to do everything you want, but there will be people who will make you feel ashamed to do the things and to question their version of events.
Yeah.
And that's something we see all around. The questioning, you're not allowed to question things. That happened during the pandemic, that happens during wars, that happens during, and it's always manipulated by the media who push out this idea, the ideas of why you shouldn't question these things. Andrew Marr, for instance, I know we talked about him early, but he has his own show, and one of the things that he was pushing out, he was like saying about World Economic Forum conspiracy theories.
Right.
And now I'm someone who writes about the real history of the World Economic Forum. Andrew Marr writes a conspiracy theory of the World Economic Forum that they're all good and they're all after and they've got no connection with Kissinger and the deep state, and Klaus Schwab wasn't brought up through the CIA, and they've got no, he's the conspiracy theorist, and he's trying to create this conspiracy which is a one where all of these good guys are the good guys and we're the bad people, and we that journalist is the evil person and is conspiring, and that is the conspiracy itself, and so he peddles that. And when you actually listen to what he had to say on his program, I went through it. It's quite fabulous because he says that the Great Reset is a conspiracy theory, a mainly right-wing anti-Jewish conspiracy theory. The Great Reset.
Why is it anti-Jewish? I know
that's what Andrew Marr points out. Don't ask me to explain.
No. I've never heard that. Angle.
This is what he said. This is what he said. By mainly, it's pushed by mainly anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic conspiracy theorists. I think is what mainly his angle is. Is that all of these people, he's trying to bundle it up in the same. The Great Reset was announced by the World Economic Forum, was announced by Klaus Schwab. They had a year. I spent a year covering the Great Reset, in their own words. This is the year of the Great Reset. All of it. 2 years later, Andrew Marr is telling people that the Great Reset doesn't exist and is a conspiracy theory. Now that is so... if you are sitting at home watching Andrew Marr and thinking he's telling you the truth, you are getting the lowest form of pond scum journalism.
I feel like when I've seen any backlash against the Great Reset, it's not that they... It's often that they don't... It's not that they say it didn't happen. It's that they say, oh, it is a real thing that happened, but it was quite a good thing. It was all about climate. And I remember it was there was a lot of videos of, Venice, and like the dolphins were returning to Venice, and they were saying that this was the time that we were going to reset, and it was all the good things, and it was all for the climate. I don't know if I've seen anything about it like not being real. I've just seen them spin it in a different way.
God, dolphins in Venice.
Yeah, dolphins returning to Venice.
Yeah, not sure about that. I bet. Yeah, I mean that's some. I bet you
that was COVID. It was when like no one was rowing and the cars were stopped and animals were coming back to the cities and trees were growing more than they ever had.
I bet you they got a load of dolphins, shoved them in that shitty water, the shittiest water that you can find, and those dolphins were dead
CIA
within
dolphins.
3 to 6 months with lasers on their head. Our good old fashioned James Bond dolphins. They're my favorite type of dolphins.
What was the I guess, was it the Vatican, and was it I forget the name of the woman who you said the rhyming Italian royal name connection?
Countess Bracetti Peretti Nicole Youngkerman.
Yeah, was this the story that you got the most backlash about, or what's the thing that people have pushed back about the most? Was it Pottinger?
God. Yeah, Pottinger, I mean, a lot of my work, people just aren't allowed to see. They're not allowed to read. They're not allowed to do anything. I suppose backlash, it's not it's not a public backlash with Youngkerman because the public don't know. If the public knew, then they would be fine. Public backlash, I don't think I've had many. Because my work hasn't been allowed to even be viewed properly by the public, because the public automatically assume they know what I say or who I am without actually reading my work. A lot of the it becomes esoteric when you're talking to people who are claiming that you're conspiracy theorists, and you're like, what work of mine have you read? And they say, I won't read any of your work. And I say, do you realize what you're saying? Because I don't think you know, and you're saying I don't know, and I've been programmed.
Sure.
So the only backlash I seem to get is from people who
they've heard about you from someone else.
No. The biggest backlash was a purposely. It was I had hurt their daddy. I had hurt their daddy when I 4 days before the American election. I released the article Epstein, Musk, the Third Culture dossier, which revealed that Musk had gone through Epstein-funded program on how to manipulate people's behavior by using social media, and was now in charge of X. And it's a very complex article. It's very full of information. It's very hard to argue against. And it includes one picture where Elon Musk is in the background there, and Jeffrey Epstein's in the background there, and Zach Boger's in the middle.
Right.
And so it shows they were in the same event, at an Edge event as well. And Musk's little muskarats came at me. All of the big accounts, the massive accounts on X, was this is lies, you're just saying that because what, he appeared in a picture. It's like, oh no, you haven't bothered reading the article. It's transcripts to every single meeting. There's audio to every single meeting. There's videos to every single meeting, including Musk speaking during the meeting that are funded by Epstein. And those people looked for the first thing that they could find, think that the article was the crux of the article, because they're not used to actually reading articles that are like that are complex articles that have a lot of sources, a lot of links. So they take out the first thing that they would see in a hit piece and assume they can treat it as a hit piece, and it kept falling apart from them. So the amount of a backlash I had was significant, but it was from a load of people who had been indoctrinated through the X platform by the person who it was about. And now everything I wrote has proven to be true, and the Epstein-Musk relationship is now documented in the Epstein files. So all of those people, if I get backlash, it makes no difference.
Sure.
It's, again, like in the community, people are angry.
Yeah.
They want to defend their master, the people who have told them.
I think they jump to conclusions as well. It's a thing where, like, I imagine, and I don't know because I've not looked into it nearly as much as you have, but I imagine there are people, because Epstein was a well-connected guy. Like, not every single person who was, or was it Stephen Hawking was on his island? I don't think Stephen Hawking was going and fucking kids while he was there. Maybe he was. I don't know. I don't want to say any more about that. But there's going to be people who were, like, connected with him for financial reasons. There's going to be people who maybe didn't know fully what they were getting involved with. They didn't obviously know about his CIA connections. There's so many people in those files, and people jump to the conclusion of, oh, just because you've mentioned, you know, Elon Musk's name with Epstein, he must have been fucking kids. And it's like, no. This was 2003. He was a well-tied, well-connected guy between different governments and different intelligence agencies. And I don't know, because I haven't read that article of yours yet. But it's the thing where, like, people were connected with. I know a lot of people stayed connected with him after his court case as well. But I imagine some people probably dropped ties with him around the time that happened.
The 2008 one's pretty significant, just because it's a very small. It's 6 master classes. It's a very small group of people, and they're at the top level.
Sure.
It's the head of Twitter, the head of one of the heads of YouTube, head of Facebook, the head of,
what was his name? The head of Twitter.
Evan Williams back in the day. It was I know who. It
was like the guy after
Jack,
him,
Jack Dorsey.
Yes,
but he was another one. Right. Evan Williams was the one who was involved in the Edge master classes as well at that time. But also 2009, because 2008, while he's taking part in this, Epstein's in prison
Oh, he was already in prison.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was like
For-
2014.
No, 2008. He gets out in 2009.
Okay.
And in 2009, when he gets out, day after, the day and a half, so a half a day, I don't want to get it wrong, a day and a half after Epstein gets out of prison for molesting a child, Epstein, Edge, and SpaceX with Elon Musk produce an Edge masterclass on synthetic genomics about changing the very genes inside you, reprogramming your genes as though they're a computer, as if by computer.
Right.
That's 2009. And so it shows that they were complicit during a moment where they were Epstein funding at the moment he was in prison for molesting a child.
Why were they at a conference about reprogramming genes? Is this to do with like Neuralink? Like, did different people have different interests?
Synthetic genomics was run by George Church and J. Craig Venter, who were the two of the main people who were about reprogramming genes themselves.
Okay.
One of the parts of that course has been since deleted. One of the only courses that have been deleted online, so you can't see or hear what happened in it, was Humans 2.0, and is about the change to transhumanism.
Right.
What they were looking at doing in that course is getting into your genes and having a computer program that would reprogram your genes as though it's a computer. So they wouldn't. It's not about implanting anything inside you.
Yeah.
It's about using your own genetics, reprogramming it as though it's a computer, so that you then change humans to a transhuman state.
Right.
And they're one step away from that. And these were the people, the top people. J. Craig Venter and George Church aren't just like a little scientist down. They're the people who invented genomic sequencing and modern genomics as it is. So these are the top people. And that's why part of the reason it's so important is because that was 16 years ago and this has developed massively since.
Is that connected in any way to COVID?
Well, you know, there's the mRNA technology is different than the previous technology.
Yeah.
I spoke in 2002 when I was living in Chile with Whitney Webb. I got contacted by an ex-head of Pfizer, a guy called Mike Eden, who I have a lot of time for. I have a lot of time for Mike Eden. He's a really clever guy, and he had read my Welcome 5 article, and he was like, everything in here, it reminds me of all the times I worked with some of these people. What you said is correct. He was really excited about it.
What was his connection? What did he do?
He's a head of Pfizer.
Oh, head of Pfizer. You're right.
So
Okay.
I mean, head of Pfizer Pharmaceuticals.
Okay, yeah.
So we're creating and designing drugs for Pfizer. That's pretty high up.
Right.
And this was during the noughties, and he said during that period, they had gone through every single chemical compound and what they'd done. They knew if you mix this compound with this compound, then and give it to humans, it'll have this result in the body, and that will help this, or this. And so they knew everything. They knew they had done all of the research. Computers had been enough that they could sequence these things and test out all of these things. So they knew everything, and the limit of the former compound-based pharmaceutical industry was over, and biotechnology was to begin.
Sure.
And biotechnology is something a little bit different, and a lot of it was around different RNA technologies. Of course, messenger RNA, mRNA is just one of many different RNA technologies and different RNA thing that affects a certain part of our cells in a certain way, but there's loads of different ways to do this, and they wanted to that was a lot of this changing the way pharmaceuticals are, changing the way we look at genomics and things like this. They're all connected because they're the same scientists who are pushing forward. So one of the people who are pushing forward RNA technology within pharmaceuticals for behavioral change was Christian Angermeyer and his company with Nicole Junkerman.
For behavioral change, you mean like curing depression, or
now
like...
that's how they sell it.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So can you imagine they'd be like, hey, we got this thing that'll make you bliss out and you'll no longer have to worry about absolutely anything. Can you imagine that? We're going to call it Soma.
I've read that somewhere before.
Yeah, I know. That's the world we're in. We're in the world where we've always been in that world. This is another thing. the science fiction of the past is just a vision of the future. It's just what people will want to create, because the amount of combinations we got, like in pharmaceuticals, is limited. We've only got a limited number of ideas that we can have and things that we can produce. And a lot of these guys go away and they try and find the thing that will be most productive for their profits and for their margins. They're not trying to find the thing that'll be most productive for human health or humankind. And then there's tiers to it. If they discover a way to make everybody well, they're going to give it to the richest, and it's going to be a really high price tag, because we live in we're coming out of a crony capitalist society, moving into a stakeholder capitalist society, moving into a tokenization society, and all of those different things mean that how information is bought and sold, and how what elite means then are changed slightly. But really, it's the elites. It's always been the same. The elites are the people in society who have access to the best technology of the time.
So is it if you have a theory or a belief on this? I know the main idea is that, and you said it a little bit earlier, that COVID was... People think it was a bioweapon, whether it was released on purpose or an accident, but it could theoretically not be a bioweapon. mRNA could be a part of this change in genomics, transhumanism movement.
I would say that this, especially if you, and this, I mean, this could get you in a lot of trouble with YouTube or stuff for talking about this sort of stuff. But in Britain, they did different batches, different strengths, different strands, different RNA. They sent them out to different areas, and they watched carefully what effect it had. So it was obviously an experimental process. That experimental process, if you go back in the history of just Britain, you'll see that experimental process constantly repeated with different new medical technologies, including stuff that has a military aspect via port and down. That includes the spraying of our entire country. People wince like it's a conspiracy theory.
Yeah, no, I saw you talk about that. I know they did it in America, because they flew, what was it? It was during Operation Paperclip. They flew certain things over, I think it was San Francisco and like California, but I didn't realize they'd been doing it here.
Between 1950 and 1980 something, we know for sure from their own documents, from their own records, they admitted it in the 1990s.
And what was the purpose of doing this?
First of all, they were spraying zinc cadmium sulfide, which is heavily cancerous, across the entirety of Britain, and then they were checking to see how many people went into hospital. So the point was to see if how many people would be killed by spraying a certain amount. So they were that's the British government killing, the Ministry of Defence killing people on purpose. The next, E. coli, forms of E. coli, they said they were inert forms, but it's been proven that they were not. There were others that were active forms that were sprayed over the entirety of the country by ship, by plane, by car.
When was this?
This was between the 50s and the 80s. You've got images of them doing it. You've got the maps of them doing it. You've got them admitting it in court. You've got all of the reports, military reports, showing they're doing it. In one case, one ship got to one plane got to the end of its run with one of these chemical dumps, and they were over East Lulworth on the south coast of England, and they had all the stuff left, so they just dumped it all in one. And the town of East Lulworth and the neighbouring town, I can't remember which town is called, they had birth defects galore, loads of them. Now the government are ticking boxes and saying, okay, birth defects and everything, like Nazis, and then denying it. And
what's the purpose? Is it like to prepare? I know, like in the Californian and the American experiments, when it was revealed, when it was leaked or whatever, they said it was for preparing people in case of a biowarfare attack. So, like, what is the
It was to prepare to do a biowarfare.
It's like, okay,
attack.
if this happens...
It's not to prepare people for a biowarfare attack. It's to prepare to do a biowarfare attack on people.
Right.
So, they posed it as, it's and this is how Porton Down did it. This was one of the factors that was an issue with it. They were saying all of their research was only for defense, when in actual fact, they all had offensive military elements and would be used in an offensive military format in the right circumstances for them, the right circumstances.
Was there a name of this particular operation?
I can't remember what the operation was called. Hundreds of them.
Yeah.
But they were. It's not just. If you go to my Substack or NEWSPASTE and you put in Porton Down or Porton Down's ideological cloud,
sure,
the 100 years of human experimentation, I think it's called. But anyway, it's the links to all of the official military documents showing that they were doing this are all in there, including a lot of work by people. I can't remember one guy who I included in there. I can't remember his name now. He's done so much work. It's not like it's been reported in the BBC. It's been reported by Channel 4. It's been reported by the mainstream. But people still see it as conspiracy theory, not because it's conspiracy theory, but because they've been trained to see anything, even if it's admitted to them that it's happened, they still see it as, because they've been trained to see everything that is uncomfortable. This is uncomfortable. The reality is uncomfortable, and people automatically reject what's uncomfortable, so they've been made to feel uncomfortable about taking in that information, even though there's lots of sources and evidence that prove it conclusively. Not little bit, not just, this isn't conjecture, this is the government's own words. And so what was the reason for it? Well, it was to check how many people they would kill if they sprayed Germany, or if they sprayed France, or if they in a war. Right. It's to see how many people went into hospital, and they killed British people, lots of British people. They disabled people. They made when people turn around and say, "Oh, this increase in autism, it used to be 1 in 8,000, and now it's 1 in 20 and 30," and people say, "Oh, well, that's because they've been putting crap and they've been spraying us." And people go, "Oh, how dare you? That's an uncomfortable vision that someone's doing something bad to me, and I don't want to believe that anybody's ever done anything bad to me." And everybody does that. They're trained to believe, I don't want to believe someone's done something bad to me, mummy. And that's it. It's a spoiled child vision of the world. I'm not going to accept, because my ego won't accept it, because it means it's an attack on the very nature of reality. And that is a repeated theme by governments and by officials.
Does that connect in any way? I know people were talking a couple of months ago about, I can't remember the name of the company. I was Googling them like a month or two ago, and it was an organization involved with Bill Gates, and they were talking about, I think it was cloud seeding, if I'm not mistaken, in Britain.
It's now, cloud seeding is something that's been going on for donkeys. Yeah. And it's ridiculous over here. I lived in South America. I lived in Chile. No cloud seeding at all. I did not see one little bit. No spraying in the sky. I lived by an airport. There was an airport just down the road. I lived in a place called Pucón, at a little airport. No spraying. Didn't see any of it. The skies was always so clear. Loads of countries like this. You got Britain. You're like, it's coming up to the weekend. Friday hits. You start seeing them spray. Saturday is a lovely sunny day. The spraying still happening. Sunday it starts to rain. But the cloud seeding is like that. It takes a little bit of time. Yeah. They spray it up. You go look at maps of planes going up in the air doing this pattern over and over again. And then it rains. Yeah. And it's not actually a difficult technology. It's not. And why people don't understand why? Well, it's an agenda that builds up. It's all of these agendas build up. They see what the future looks like. Yeah. In the future, we'll need to see a seed cloud so that we
block out the sun for climate change. Yeah.
Then, if you question the cloud seeding, you must question climate change. And I've talked to William Happer, a guy who is probably about, like, I've interviewed a fair few people, not many people have had the effect that William Happer had on me.
I've never heard of him. Yeah.
Princeton University professor who can tell you about global warming, about climate change in a way that is uncomfortable. This is a guy who worked with Oppenheimer and other people. This is a guy who knows his stuff inside and out, and they don't let you hear him. They don't let you hear him, because if you listen to him, you'd be like, oh, so it is partially true and it is partly false.
Sure.
That's everything.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course. So, if it exists even slightly, people are going to take advantage of it. So if it exists,
So there's no here we go. These are the extremes. These are the binary dialectics that get created. We are all left to argue. You're either in the camp climate change doesn't exist at all, or climate change is going to kill the entire world. And the truth is always somewhere in the middle. And that truth is uncomfortable because everybody's in each of their camps. So the people who believe William Happer is a scientist. He believes that climate change is somewhere around here. I believe it's somewhere around by there too. Could be really dangerous in certain parts, is affecting things really negatively. But then you look at the people who we give control over to, who say climate change is so bad, you need to give control over to us.
You must have the Great Reset. You must eat bugs.
People who are polluting the rivers in our lands, who are pumping crap into the seas. They're the same people who are destroying everything, and we're going to trust them that they're going to go and seed.
Bill Gates and his whole lab-grown meat thing that's kind of fallen apart recently because the disastrous health effects of eating lab-grown meat.
Please don't. I mean, I understand like why people would feel that that's like a good thing to do because I love animals. I mean, I totally love animals. I
think that's a really interesting connection. Actually, I think people always confuse those two things. They talk about like the destruction of the earth, and they pair that with climate change, right? The overfishing of the oceans, which is a real problem, and the plastic in the oceans killing the animals. It's a horrible situation. But people just connect those two things because they go nature, animals, whatever, what we're doing to the planet. And they don't realize we need to talk about two different things. I think we need to separate the climate conversation from the destruction of nature conversation, because that's a real thing. And I do think climate change in some part is real. I think it's overblown, but I do think it's real. And I think that is something that they've clearly tied together, because it just makes the whole, like you say, it just puts people into camps. You can't have a grey area around the whole thing. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and I kind of threw this information at her. She was reading a book called The Year of the Rat, and I think it's all about like the far, far right. I think particularly in Britain, I'm not 100% certain. And she said it's all about... because this is the thing, people call everyone on the right Nazis, and like this is the thing, there are real Nazis, so it's a bit of a problem when you forget that. She said the book had a lot to do with eugenics, and I was like, oh, it was really interesting. And it's that thing when like you just throw people loads of information and they don't really know. Event 201, and they go, whoa, you got to start from the beginning. And I threw this at her, and then I needed to go into the other room because we were shooting an advert, and I didn't, and she sort of didn't know what to say to me. And I was saying, whether or not, whatever you believe in climate change, it actually doesn't matter. What people don't know is the origin of global warming and climate change and how it had to do with eugenics and the Population Council. And that's something that's not even hidden. People have never heard of it. You can go and look it up, and it was like the Population Council funded it was like in the 74, 76 in like Sweden, and they funded the like building, the like place where they held the thing, and one of the heads of whatever government actually spoke about, he actually said on microphone, you can watch him doing it, saying this is actually all to do with population control. He didn't say eugenics, obviously, but he said population control, and everyone shut him down. And so it's whatever you believe in climate change, you need to know that the origin of the global warming movement, rather than say the actual change of the planet, the movement itself on behalf of elites around the world was to do with eugenics and population control.
And it was definitely late 60s, early 70s, and it was all to do with the Harvard crowd, Kissinger, Guido Goldman, all these guys. They were also involved with a man called Maurice Strong. Maurice Strong was very central to this. He was the one who created almost everything to do with the climate change agenda. I'm almost trained by the other side to say climate scam, but then it makes you think that it is climate change, as Happer will tell you, as anybody who's telling the truth will tell you. Climate change is something that's been like really humans don't really have control over the climate. Sorry about that. Sorry to tell you, but the Earth is much bigger than us, and it does its own thing. And it used to be molten rock, and in one day in the future it'll just all be dust or whatever, and we won't even be here. So there's gonna be change.
Sorry, everyone. The camera turned off there, but we are back. We were in the middle of talking about climate change, and you were talking about this professor.
So I was talking about Maurice Strong. Maurice Strong's one of the most important people in the history of the climate change agenda. He was really in the same circles as Kissinger and Schwab, and went on to create a lot of the conventions, like the Rio Convention in the early 90s. That was also Maurice Strong. When you actually look at the rise of these guys, a lot of it is at the same time as the rise of the Malthusians, the neo-Malthusians, the Club of Rome.
Okay.
So there was a group created by Alexander King, I think his name is, and Aurelio Peccei. Alexander King was a Scottish chemist, and Aurelio Peccei was an Italian industrialist businessman. He was one of the guys who created Boeing, and they created a group which was a neo-Malthusian group. Now, Thomas Malthus was a statistician. Yeah, good. There you go. He's one of those from the 1700s, I believe he was, and he came up with this idea called kind of limits to growth. What that's based on, which is as the population rises, they need to consume more, and you can't create enough food to meet the need for that rising population, and so you have to limit the growth of people for there to be abundance. And that's the constant, the Thomas Malthus idea is you need to limit the amount of humans if you're going to control agriculture correctly. Now this was based in pre-industrial times. So now we don't have the same problems, but the neo-Malthusians wanted to say, okay, in the industrial world, we're going to have the same thing. And we need, and in the Club of Rome produced a book in 1972 called Limits to Growth. And they did a speech in the January 1973 in the Davos, in the World Economic Forum, on the third World Economic Forum. And it was saying that the enemy of man is the enemy of humans is man itself, and that we need to decrease the population of humans. The number that these guys ended up coming round to was probably somewhere between 500,000 to 1 million. Right. So basically, kill off the majority of the world, and that would be so that we could all live a life of luxury. But that's not. So the rich families could live the life of luxury, and the people, if you imagine who they will see as expendable, it won't be each other. It won't be other rich people. It will be poor people, and this is called the Malthusian agenda. A lot of people call it Malthusianism, and there's certain parts. Again, if you take it to the extremes, then you'll sound nuts, and if you take it to the other extreme on their side, you'll also sound nuts. And the answer might be somewhere in the middle. There might be that there is an element where we do have to control the amount that humans use, and etc. There's a certain amount of truth behind that, but it gave these people a lot of ability to say, now what we're going to do is we're going to decide how much food you're allowed, how many people on Earth is normal, what climate change is, how it is affected, what we will concentrate it being affected on, and how we'll start trading in carbon credits and things like this, and these sort of create an entire world based around the system of climate. If you base everything around the system of a crisis that you perceive, whether or not the crisis is real, you're basing your whole system around the idea of a crisis, which doesn't allow you to get out of a crisis. It just managing a crisis. If that crisis then turns out to have been overblown or easier to manage later on with new technological solutions, then it is just a form of control.
Sure.
So early on, part of the reason this was happening during this time, and the early 60s and late 70s are so important, is in 1967, 1968, Herman Kahn, one of the mentors of Klaus Schwab, one of the friends of Kissinger and the like, wrote something for the State Department. I think it was originally for the State Department. It's called the Year 2000, and it predicted at the Hudson Institute they used game theory to map out all the technologies of the future that they were expected. If we have this technology, that will lead to these technologies, and basically they mapped out all of the technologies we can expect forever. So we're still going through that. People can go to crummy.com. If you go to the second article in my Schwab series on NEWSPASTE, it's called Dr. Klaus Schwab, or How the CFR Taught Me to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. If you go right down to the bottom and go up to the second link that's linked in from the bottom, you'll find a list of all of these technologies, and it'll show you which ones have been achieved, which ones are almost achieved, and which ones haven't been achieved yet. Right. So these guys knew what the future looked like, knew what it was coming, knew the technological solutions that could fix any problems, that if we've got any element of human-caused climate disaster or effect, then there's loads of technologies that we can achieve that can solve those problems, and that's what really we should be looking at. Herman Kahn, he was one of the first keynote speakers in the World Economic Forum, the first ever World Economic Forum event, which was a European Management Symposium, 1971. Herman Kahn, John Kenneth Galbraith had been sent back with Klaus Schwab by Henry Kissinger from Henry Kissinger's international seminar to set up the World Economic Forum. Herman Kahn saw this as a positive thing. 1973, the Club of Rome do their speech, Malthusianism, and it turned Herman Kahn red-faced, angry that they saw they could not see what he had done when he predicted the technologies of the future. It wasn't about limit. It's about we the limits on Earth. We can go on to meteors. We can go on. We can start mining.
Sure.
We can go other planets. We've got all of the access to minerals all the way if we continue following the trend of technology. And so Herman Kahn saw a much more positive future. It's not one of climate crisis and stuff. It's one where humans find solutions to the problems that they've got. And so he wrote another paper then in about 74, 75 in response to these Malthusians, in response to this move towards climate crisis and the idea of climate. And this is something, I mean, the Club of Rome said, we looked at all of the different things that we could use. This is in Limits to Growth. We looked at all the different things we could use to make people do stuff, and climate crisis seemed to be the best and most effective way to make people respond. So they weren't using it because it was correct. They were using it because it was the best way to manipulate people into doing stuff. Herman Kahn saw this. He wrote out the next 200 years, which was a positive outlook into what we could be in the future if we actually use technology in the correct way. He did note, though, in his original piece that, there's some of the problems, and the quote that I end that piece that I just mentioned with as well is this quote, is, there's technologies and technological advances, and there's problems and issues that humans are going to face in the future that are unthinkable, beyond our realm, our capacity of understanding, are so dangerous, are so fundamentally precarious that they risk the total extinction of humanity, and that in making the decisions on how we respond to them, it may be that we end up having to find some other way to do it, because humans themselves might not be able to find the solutions. They might not be capable of finding solutions. And part of that, I think Herman Camm, what he was trying to express was this, was that you go to an extreme binary dialectic. Everything's either the whole world's going to die or the whole world's okay and nothing's going to happen.
Right.
And the truth is somewhere in the middle. Well, if we're only putting control into the hands of the people who are either one way or the other, then we're never ever, we're going to end up killing ourselves.
Yeah.
We're going to end up doing it to ourselves. We're going to end up like flipping between as well, the way our systems work. One government will be completely anti-climate, like climate agenda, and the other will be totally pro-climate agenda, and that itself will cause issues within the climate. So there was a lot. There's a lot of people who are in the same group who created this a climate crisis that is not real.
Yeah.
But there is a climate crisis that is real. So that's the again. These are all uncomfortable truths. These are the things that make it hard to have conversations. If it's hard for two people to sit down and come to terms with something, then it ends in conflict often.
Yeah.
So the fact that it is both true and not true causes people great it's just. We got to see, as humans, we are used to going to the extremes because we feel comfortable with either it being yes or it being no, and nothing is ever just yes or no. So we always fail whenever we treat something like that. And that's why, to control us, to manipulate us, that's why a lot of these intelligence agencies create binary dialectics that are opposing, that divide two people. So we've seen this, I mean, within the trans community, you see the same thing. There's extremes on either side. The reality is always somewhere in between. I know people who, like, if they took the extreme side that people who say they're trans are don't have mental capacity to make up their own decision. That's the one side of the debate, and the other side of the debate is everybody can be a butterfly if they want to be.
Sure.
Those two ends. If you're on either end of the spectrum, you're going to fight. You're going to shout. You're going to scream. The reality is, I know someone who's very lovely, who's got a kid who's trans, and you if you've got a 15-year-old who says this is how I feel comfortable, and you alienate them, you will not have a 15-year-old hanging around with you anymore. You're going to have a 16-year-old and then a 17-year-old and an 18-year-old who feels detached from their parents. You're going to find division in the home, which is something that's very important for those who set these agendas.
Sure.
They want division in the home, and you'll find that you won't have a family unit anymore. And I know this person is one of the most loveliest people I've ever met in my life, and they want their kid to be the happiest kid around, and to feel comfortable. So I know loads of people who would say they're idiots. They don't know what they're thinking. And they're all these people. Some of these people are my very close friends as well, and they get very angry and they get very animated. But again, I see it as binary. They've indulged in a binary dialectic that isn't true. It's either one way or the other. It's not. The truth is always in the middle. The truth is always that humans don't feel comfortable in their own skin sometimes. Humans quite often, they feel like, I'm a bit like a boy, or a bit like a girl, or a bit like this, or a bit like that. I'm a bit effeminate at times. I'm a bit masculine at times. I understand that. But again, we are also served up that agenda suits governments and powerful people who want to cause division, because they know that it will really anger one side to go against what they see as reality, and the other side will defend themselves because it's their life.
People forget what they're existence. People forget what they're actually fighting about. It's the news straw man's one argument or another, depending on whether you're on the left or the right, and people forget that it's actually, in the case of the trans movement, it's quite a grey area. I don't think it's nearly as extreme as everyone's making it out to be. I know so many people who are trans, they're lovely people. I've got nothing against that. Obviously, there's cases where, like, You can see it in the UK, and you can see it in America, where there are people who take advantage of that. And there's the argument that a lot of my trans friends don't understand, which is the idea that there are people who are psychopaths who will take advantage of the fact that now, like, people who were once men can go into a women's toilet. There are people who have taken advantage of that. That's a horrible thing. I don't think anyone who's trans wants that to happen.
The guy who groomed me for 2 years between the age of 9 and 11, when I went to the police, and when he eventually got done for it, and he did get done, but he got 18 months probation for molesting a 3-year-old kid. He then, because he was outed and everybody knew, he just stood outside the toilet at Asda waiting for little boys to go in.
Right.
And you know, he would use any agenda. He would dress up in whatever clothes he wanted. Yeah. If he was in to little girls, he would have done that in 2 ticks, because he did not care. That does not bear relevance to anybody else's decision making or lives. But the want, and it is fair enough, the want, and I understand it, the want to protect the young, it should be the first and foremost. Of
course.
Before that, throwing babies out with bathwater is the opposite. Everybody has this notion of what they think is correct or not, and then the people who are opposing this one notion then try and force another notion onto the kids, because they want to protect those kids from these people who are forcing a notion onto kids. And it's like, I've seen this before. I've seen this when I was young as well, growing up in Thatcher's Britain and beyond. People threw loads of notions onto me. I knew this as a kid from growing up in a family which had pretty much anti-Catholic tendencies. A lot of them, my great-grandfather was Orange Order, and that had passed down through. So there was a lot of, you know, I never picked up any of those things. I think part of it is because I always saw them as arguments, and I wanted to remain out of arguments. And the arguments are you usually argue because something doesn't make sense on one side or the other, and someone feels that because they're arguing, they must make sense.
Yeah.
They must be the ones who make sense. Usually it's both sides don't make sense for different reasons.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I was having a conversation with my partner the other day about the state of like abortion in the US, for example. And I was saying it's that thing where, like, we think people should have the freedom of choice for their own body. That's what we think. But if there are people who, for religious reasons most of the time, or whatever reason they have, if they live in a certain state and they want to vote a certain way that doesn't agree with what you think, if the majority of people in a certain country or state think that way because of their beliefs or whatever it is, they should be allowed to live in a place where that's okay. And, you know, it's the same thing. I think, you know, it's the degradation of abortion rights in America is like... And if you look at where that starts, you've got the Planned Parenthood movement that originally came from the Eugenics Society, that came from Bill Gates' grandfather and father and others like them. Yeah. And a lot of it was about how to kill black people. Yes. There was the woman, wasn't there? There was a woman who started Planned Parenthood, and her stated... you don't even remember her name. It's not a quiz. It's not a quiz.
No,
but that was the agenda of Planned Parenthood from the start.
I helped research an article about her. I just can't remember her name now. Yeah. But yeah, she is a lot of. You gotta understand that whole thing. The majority of it can actually be traced. And again, go back to, at the same time, Herman Kahn, who I talked about just now, was writing the year 2000 and predicting all these technologies of the future. He was also writing an ancillary document for the State Department that was much more secret. In 1968, he wrote an ancillary document that included a section on training leadership candidates outside the normal educational institutions, which was, of course, the Young Global Leaders, and had been really looking at the Kissinger's International Seminar, which had just finished. But he also wrote about how the black community's birth rates were going out of control, and they had to work out how to get rid of some of them. And a lot of it was about getting rid of black people. It's really naive to think that the these people only have your best interest at heart. Some of these people, a vast majority of the people from the past, especially in the 60s and 70s, they had the best interest of the white majority in mind, and they kept black people in a situation where they were uneducated, still in a state of like slavery,
Right.
and then said, how can we kill them but get rid of them because they are that type of people.
Yeah.
At the same time, 1967, Klaus Schwab is leaving in Kissinger's international seminar, as Herman Cairns writing this. He goes, he works for his father's old company, is the director of the company, Peter Schmidt-Heine, calls him up and says, Klaus, you just done this Kissinger's international seminar, come back to Escher Weiss, your dad's old Nazi model company, and help with the merger between Schultz and Escher Weiss. And not only did he do the merger, he also helped to sell illegal nuclear weapons technology illegally to the apartheid South African regime in 1967, 1968, 1969, 1970, while Klaus Thiel, Peter Thiel's father, was also working in South Africa as the head of the Swakopmund uranium mine, the Rosing uranium mine near Swakopmund, in what was then southwest South Africa, is now Namibia. They were sending black people down, slaves, down the uranium mines with zero protection, and they were ingesting uranium, and the four languages, the main languages in the region at the time, all came up with the same term: the mines are eating us. And they were going home to their wives, and they were going home to their children, and Klaus Schwab and Klaus Thiel and other people were purposely genociding black people, targeting these people and seeing how many they could kill over that time. And it works as well. They were killing not only the mine workers, they were killing their wives, and they were killing their kids as well. It is devastating. And it was all the same time, the same agenda, kill black people. At the same time, the South African apartheid regime that Klaus Schwab and Klaus Thiel are working for, working out how to eugenically murder only black people with plagues. Now, that's those are the people who created our world, our current world,
that was
the World
years ago.
Economic Forum.
What do you think they're doing now?
Just before Klaus Schwab goes and sells that nuclear weapons technology, he's taken to UC Berkeley in America, to the center of the nuclear debate at one of the peak in 1966 and 67, to learn from the top guys for 6 weeks training, so that he could leak nuclear weapons technologies to evil fascist regimes, so that they could shore up something called mutually assured destruction, a paradigm where if everybody's got nuclear weapons and no one will fire nuclear weapons. A lot of these guys, they came to the idea of Planned Parenthood and stuff through actually the fact of how to control this burgeoning black population that disgusted them so much that they were genociding in many different ways.
How I want to round this off on a positive note. I said to my partner yesterday when we were on the radio that you've got such a good sense of humor, such a character. When people are learning this stuff, because I think everyone does. I think everyone who starts to look into this stuff for their own selves goes through a period of mourning, whether it's a couple of weeks or months or years, or they get used to this idea that you're talking about, that there are people out there with a lot of power and they're out to hurt you, and not necessarily in the ways you expect. It's sometimes a lot more sinister than you expect, and it's sometimes a lot more subtle than you expect. How do you keep such a good sense of humor and positivity around this stuff, especially as you're in it all the time?
I have to say that a lot of it is like you have to view things in the real sense, and you have to view things in the parody sense. I think the answer to that would be British comedy. For years and years and years, I loved all of the best. Everything from Red Dwarf to Blackadder and the like. And it gave me this sense of that everything has got a silly side to it. That humans themselves, yes, what we're doing is emotionally hard and horrible, and we all feel like lost, and we all feel like we're in shit. But it really just brings us together in loads of different ways. And I don't think, I think if you only tackle things, and this is one of the reasons why I do things like Truth Bomb, why I create like the Jeffrey Epstein podcast and musical and stuff. I create these things because when I look out there on the independent media or the media, it's all people giving you the darkest ideas of all of the darkest, most horrible things and telling you the world is over. And the world just is not over. That's part of the, you know, when you say that people, they feel down and their world's broken apart, loads of people just don't get over that. They spend all of their time telling you that everybody's going to die. Yet there's, in reality, when you look at it, it's a comedy of errors, but a comedy nonetheless. I look outside, I saw through COVID, you know, I saw through COVID. I was so early on realizing what was going on in COVID. I was writing the articles that were explaining what was really going on behind the scenes before anybody else was allowed to an extent. And I was able to do that because I was truly independent. But then there was times during COVID where I would stand there and I would look like I was in Cardiff. I was outside Marks and Spencer's, and I was watching this queue of people, and I wanted to go in to get some food, but then I realized, look at that queue of people and this rigmarole and this stupidity. There was a lady who was a manager of Waitrose, and she had to organize everybody. And it really should just be line up, queue up, and go in one at a time. I'd seen this method employed in Chile just before.
We do it in Glasgow as well. We had a big Tesco right around the corner, and we had to queue up behind loads of people, get your trolley, get your mask on. They installed the little electronic gates before you could go in, so people wouldn't just rush in. It was the weirdest thing.
So in Chile, you had to show a pass. You could only be out for 2 hours, like once a week, maybe twice a week. Maybe I'm wrong about once a week, but I think it was once a week. And you could only go out for 2 hours, and there would be automatic queues outside the supermarket of people who look like looking into space, waiting to walk in. But the British version of it was so much more animated. It was like this woman felt like she had to control and manage. As soon as you give someone power who doesn't know what to do with power, they feel like they have to use it whether or not they need to. So they could just leave people queue up and leave people walking. But this woman had to tell people what to do, tell people how to do it, tell people, keep reiterating the rules, tell people this, tell
very
people
British.
not to worry, nothing. Yeah, but also very comical. I no longer wanted to go shopping. I sat outside. I had just done my blood test so that I could fly out to South America, and I was sitting on this bollard watching this lady, and it was like watching a comedy show, because humans themselves, once you work out what power looks like, when you see how people use power, it's hilarious, and there's nothing but comedy in there. And I think there's another thing, is that when you were talking just now, you were saying about straw man and strong man and all these different things. Well, all of those things are forms of logical fallacy. And lots of people don't understand logical fallacies. They think they do. But if you go and learn every single logical fallacy you can, every single one, you learn about whataboutism and stuff. You learn about all the different words.
You learn it in like a 2-minute YouTube video.
You don't even have to learn the names for them.
Sure.
You just have to learn the essence to describe what it means and to yourself. And then you keep trying to recognize it, keep trying to spot it. I've done this for years now. This I started this process in about 2017. You can see every single argument that is built on faulty logic, whether it's the argument remains true or not after you've said it's built on a logical fallacy. Things can be true but built on a logical fallacy anyway. But the fact is, as soon as you can describe that, you break that false reality that other people live in, and they do. People live in the fake reality, and once you're able to break it, what's the moment that you have afterwards? You want to fight, because those people don't want to fight. Those people feel broken and sad, and the best way to respond to that is being like funny and is having fun about it. And so I see how power is wielded. I see how power is used. I see how people adopt it, and it started to have me with my tongue in my cheek all the time. And then I can take a little bit of the piss out of it, and then I can be objective from it. And that is a journalistic aspect of it, is that I try, when I write an article, I write down all of the facts. I try not to go too deep into this or too deep into that sometimes because you get lost in the weeds. But I at the end of it, I get an objective view about something, and then I look at someone else's view of it, and it looks like a bit of a comedy view, and then I can take the mick out of it. And that's sometimes the best way to reduce an argument, is to be like, yeah, but that bit's funny, isn't it? And then you talk about the funny aspects. Truth Bomb quiz show that I created, that is a way that not only can we tackle these hard subjects with a smile and a laugh, but we can see how ridiculous they can be, and we make them ridiculous. And in doing that, you take a lot of the power away from the most powerful people, and it allows you to see things through a much more objective lens. So I think comedy, it was given to me. I've always had the want to be silly. I never say that I'm a good comedian. I do make people laugh here and there, but a lot of what I do is about being positive in the face of darkness, but in a way that is you not treating it like darkness. I don't really think it's like darkness. I think we make things into we look at a molehill. We look at a mountain, we turn it into a molehill in our mind and pretend it's not worrying, but really it's a mountain. At the same time that we're looking at it, we see it for what it is, and then we go through. It's all our minds just. And really, what we're doing is trying to make sense. We're just flashing on and off, and we're just silly. Humans are silly. They look for silly reasons. People like listening to some conversations people have. It's just ridiculous. About subjects, but I don't belittle people. I like the fact that something makes me laugh, and the only way to get through to people, information wise, a lot of the time, is through positivity and through love as well. I mean, being nice to people, and being nice automatically comes with being silly and funny, because it's the best way to kind of like chill everything out. And I think also I've seen some bad days. So once you've seen bad days, you kind of like when the worst moments in your life has hit, when at one point my son died and had to be reanimated. He was like literally completely died and had to be reanimated. And at times like those, you suddenly discover your baseline. You're like, you pray to God, whether you believe in God or not. You do all of the things you can. It's the same with life in comedy as well. Once you see how bad things can be, everything else lightens up massively, and then you realize the only way to get through it is by belittling those who try and make our world into a puppet show, and belittling the puppet show because it's a puppet show. Puppet shows are funny. Funny. Yes. Kabuki theatre.
Yeah, saw a bit in Japan actually. I think you do that quite well. It's digestible information, which is really important. I think a lot of people don't do that. And to look at everything through a comedy lens, because either way, whether you like it or not, these things have happened, these things we spoke about. You might as well have a laugh. Yeah.
Silly world. We live in a silly world. Everybody is very silly. One of the silliest things, I gotta say, as a final note, one of the silliest things in the world is sex. You look automatically. You're like,
No. Billy Connolly talks about it. Actually, he did a master class.
Yeah, master class in sex. He went to a Billy Connolly master class in sex. Now that, sir, would be something I'd pay to see.
He did a master class, and he talked about it at one point. He's like, you just need to talk about sex, because no matter what time you are, what generation you are, sex is always funny. There's something ridiculous about it.
Oh, it is. Yeah. It is. I mean, even you can't even now. I like what a woman's calling you different names to make you all excited, and then if you actually think about what she's calling you, like, oh, that's a bit sick. and things like that. I mean, I love humans, but we really try and make ourselves out to be very serious. When in actual fact, we're these like blobby flesh things
Water
with
balloons,
bones in,
yeah.
who go up and rub up against each other. And go, I love you. I rubbed up against you. And now I love you.
The idea of like a kiss is like a lip press. What is a kiss? What is that?
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's an extraordinary release from the normality of life and the mundanity of making normal decisions based on normal principles, based on logic, and being able to release and let go, and to be able to connect with a human in a way that's truly real and truly emotional, and truly physical and mental and emotional and spiritual, and all of those things mixed in, and yet it's still very, very silly.
It's
and
fucking ridiculous.
because it's a it juxtaposes reality to this other thing that we got, and we like some people will do it every day, you know, and they do it every day, and then they go to work after they've done it. They just made all of these noises. They've been in bed and go, ooh, and then they go and they sit on the desk and they pretend that they're serious.
They weren't just doing that. Yeah.
Come on, you know. I remember I worked with I think one of the reasons why I can talk about sex pretty easy is because I've known lots of girls who tell
Italian
me
supermodels.
I wish I knew all of those. No, I don't. I remember being on a reception desk when I was about 19 years old with a girl who was a receptionist, and she was typing away, and she looked at me one day and she was like, "I've got love eggs in, and every now and again I orgasm," and then she just walked away. I was just like, afterwards I never knew whether or not she was orgasming or not. I'd look across and she'd be going, is that an orgasm? I don't know. But the fact is that humans, like, once you break reality and you realize that you're a very silly water gooey bag of silliness, then everything chills out a lot more. Reality is silly all of the time. We are silly all of the time.
I think that's a perfect place to end it. Thank you. Where can people find your work?
NEWSPASTE. Well, you could go to newspaste.com. Of course, I'm on. I go on X a lot. You can find me on nearly every platform on Johnny Vedmore, and just putting in my name. You can find my music on Spotify, Amazon, or etc., including Jeffrey Epstein podcast and musical. Yeah. You could go back in the past. You can listen to my old bands as well. But I'm also on Substack, which is a really useful platform at the moment. Long may it last. I don't know how long it will last. I'm on YouTube, of course. So I try and put myself around. I am really super, super interactive compared to most of the people on this. If you come to me and you DM me and you have a conversation with me, I will try and talk back. I will try and respond, and I also try and get to know people. So I really, really like anybody who comes to look at any of my stuff. Is so much of it. You'll have to indulge in whatever you feel like at the time, but I'm pretty positive everybody will find something that they'll be interested in.
I think even today you've given people a lot to think about, including myself.
That's a lot.
I've got a lot of Googling to do.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Thanks for having me on,
Cheers.
Tom.
Yeah,
really
thanks for
appreciate
being here. Cheers. Cool. Happy days.
Loving you. Should we make sex
right
sounds?
Into
Oh!